Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, members, officers. Claire. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, members and officers. Welcome to the Planning Committee. In the interest of safety, if the continuous fire alarm sounds, please evacuate the room and the public gallery by the stairwells. Do not attempt to use the lifts. Please assemble at Queen Victoria's statue in front of the civic offices. So far as I know, there is no fire alarm testing for this afternoon. In order to comply with the Portsmouth Cultural Trust Fire Marshal regulations, please remember to sign out when you leave the building after today's meeting. For those of you who have not attended the committee before, I will explain the running order for this afternoon. After committee members have declared their interests and agreed the minutes of the previous meeting, I will announce each item and ask those of you who are here to make your deputation to come and sit at the table. At this point, I would point out to members and to the public that due to one of the city councillors having a major committee meeting at 2 o'clock, I am going to take item 3 before item 2. Or planning item 3 before planning item 2. In each case, after the planning officer has made the presentation for the application, individual deputies will have 6 minutes to express their views, and joint deputies will have 12 minutes between them to make their views known. After which you will take no further part in the proceedings unless we need to ask a question to clarify a statement that has been made. Members will then ask questions, make comments, and the decision on the application will be made. Both members of the committee and members of the public are reminded of the need to consider material planning matters and not to refer to any personal information about other members of the public. May I draw everyone's attention to the fact that this meeting will be live streamed, that is filmed, from a camera at a fixed location at the back of the meeting room, down there, and the recording will be on the Council's website. The camera will mainly capture the backs of those making deputations, but there will be some footage of those making deputations as they approach and leave the table where the microphones are located, down there, and of people entering or leaving the room while the meeting is in progress. Members of the press and public are also permitted to record the meeting on the understanding that it neither disrupts the meeting nor records those stating explicitly that they do not wish to be recorded. Finally, may I ask everyone to use the microphones in front of them when they are speaking. You turn it on by the little button on the right-hand side and turn it off when you've finished. Before I come to the meeting, I think it would be useful for members of the public to know who we are, and so we'll go around the table, starting with me. I am Councillor Hugh Mason, Councillor for St Jude Ward. I am the chairman of this meeting.
My name's Kieran Laven. I am the Planning and Highway Solicitor.
Lisa Gallagher, Democratic Services.
Judith Smythe, Councillor for St Jude Ward.
Susie Horton, Councillor for Central Southsea Ward.
Lynn Stagg, Councillor for Baffins Ward.
I'm Tom Wood, I'm a Councillor for St Thomas Ward.
I'm Claire Udine, I'm the Councillor for Charles Dickens Ward.
Luke Stubbs, Eastern and Crowns Water Ward.
Councillor Donna Jones, Hilsey Ward.
And Ken Alcombe, Drayton and Farlington Ward.
Rebecca Wiltman, Principal Planning Officer.
Ruth Ormiller, Development Manager.
Peter Hayward, representing the authority as the Highway Authority.
Claire Upton-Brown, Head of Planning.
Thank you, members and officers. We now come to the agenda. The first item on the agenda is apologies. I have received 2 apologies. One is from Councillor Steve Pitt, who is being deputised by Councillor Tom Wood. Thank you very much, Tom. And the other one is Councillor Claire Udi, who needs to leave at 4 p.m. Half three. Yes.
Councillor Hugh Mason, that will be the same for me as Councillor Udy.
You'll need to leave at 3:30. Right, well, we'll try and push this on as fast as we can then. Any other apologies? Are there any declarations of interest? Councillor Horton.
I've taken advice, and because I am employed by the University of Portsmouth, I have been advised not to take part in that agenda item.
Councillor Udi.
I think I'll be gone by the time it's heard, but I am a student at University of Portsmouth. I've been told that I am still allowed to sit if I'm still here. Thanks.
Right. Thank you. You have before you the minutes of the meeting, which was held on the 30th of May. I would like to go through them for accuracy, and then we will take any urgent matters arising. Page 1, page 2, page 3, page 4, page 5, page 6, page 7, page 8, page 9. Can I have a proposer that these are then accepted as a correct record? Thank you, Councillor Jones. And seconded? Thank you very much, Councillor Stagg. Right. Moving onwards. We have information from the Hampshire Fire and Rescue Authority, a position statement on for planning and legislation. Ms. Upton-Brown.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just to confirm to members, I'm just in discussions with them to get confirmation from them that they were able to adequately resource any consultations from us so that it doesn't cause delay or undermine the ability of the planning committee or officers to make decisions based on lack of response.
Any questions on that matter? No. We come to item 5. Can we have updates on previous planning applications by the Assistant Director of Culture and City Development?
Chair, I have no updates this afternoon.
Right, thank you. That then brings us to the planning applications, which are in the main part of your pack. We start off with 170 Milton Road. Right. Can we have the officer's introduction on 170 Milton Road? And then I have 3 people who wish to make deputations.
Thank you. Most people will know this site as the former Brewers Arms Public House. It's located on the west side of Milton Road, which is just north of the junction with Priory Crescent. You've got Milton Park to the south here, and further north is the main traffic light junction with Valder Avenue leading out of the city. The public house has been vacant for approximately 2 years, since about June 2016. I've got some photographs coming up. So it comprises a 2-storey building with a kind of glass forward projecting front extension. There is access round the north side of the building to the back of the site, which at the moment is in use as like a sort of yard, pub garden, and there's some trees and vegetation which I will show you in a minute. This just shows a couple of images of the front, and also shows you the development across the road, which I believe is known as Prospect House, which was granted in 2011. So just looking north along Milton Road, there's a variety of building heights ranging from sort of 2 to up to 4 stories. And then to the south, similarly, the prominent sort of heights of buildings are between 2 and 3 stories, with the odd 4-story plus. And then on Priory Crescent to the south, there's a mix of residential and commercial uses, with some of these commercial uses have residential use above, in flats above. And you can see the trees behind here, which are actually on the site of the public house garden. And this just shows the junction with Priory Crescent. So looking at the back of the site, it's a bit of a mixture around the back. There's the yard area, which was a sort of pub garden, various sort of outbuildings and canopies. On the southern boundary, as I said, there's a number of trees. They are understood to be self-seeded trees, and you will see a note in the supplementary matters, which you should have in front of you, from the arboricultural officer, who has commented that they are considered to be sort of low quality specimens of self-seeded trees, and it does not raise an objection to their removal. We've got a couple of pictures looking to the west is a 4-storey block of flats, and looking to the north is the back of a 2-storey house adjacent to the site there. The application is for the demolition of the former public house building and the construction of a 3-storey building which would comprise 9 flats, which would be 7 2-bedroom flats and 2 1-bedroom flats. I've included two front elevations here. This application has been in for some time. There have been a couple of reasons for the delays. One was they've been addressing highways issues, and I'll talk about that in a bit. We've also been looking at concerns over the design. So the below image here is what was originally submitted. Officers and the Council's Design Review Panel raised some concerns over this, about the sort of form of the roof, the kind of mixture of features, inconsistency in the types of materials. Over time, this is the latest plan that was submitted as an amendment, and this is considered to be more appropriate in terms of the traditional roof pitch, more consistency in a mostly red brick form, which is more consistent with what you have on other developments nearby. So this is the larger of the images is the one you're considering today. And this just shows the rear and the side elevations. So the side elevation to the south, which would be blocked to some extent by the existing buildings, and then this is the elevation facing north, which you would see part of as you come down south from along Milton Road. In terms of the floor plan, there's 3 flats on the ground floor and the first floor, with another 2 flats on the second floor. To the rear of the site is 8 parking spaces and some grassed amenity space for the residents, and a little bit here to the front as well. The access here is wide enough here to allow 2 cars to pass, and then it's single access through to the parking spaces at the back. Now, I mentioned that there's been correspondence about the parking. It's 9 flats with 8 spaces. The total that this scheme would require in accordance with the adopted standard would be 13 spaces. The applicant had submitted 2 iterations of a parking survey. The first one, you'll see from the highway engineer's comments, there were concerns about the timing of that survey and some of the spaces identified. So an updated survey was submitted, which identified, I think it was around about 27 spaces, though the highway engineer, having reviewed that, considers that it probably identified about 13 spaces in the area that would be enough to make up the shortfall of the 5 spaces between the 8 that's being provided and the 13 that would have been required in accordance with the standards. So those 8 spaces are now considered to be an acceptable provision, and there is no objection from the highway engineer to this proposed development. I've included a couple of slides here to show the relationship with the nearest properties that would be potentially affected by the development. This is showing that the general sort of format of the building on the site. To the south here, you've got 62 to 64 Priory Crescent, which has some flats above, which currently look out onto the trees which are along the southern boundary. So there would be a change to their outlook here because they would look towards this building. The applicant had made some amendments to the design which reduced the second floor of the building here down to a flat roof, so that this window, so this is the window to 62, 64, would look towards more of a flat roof element here rather than the full 3-storey height. It's a distance of approximately 6 metres between those buildings. And this is just the image showing the trees as they exist and the window that we're referring to. And to the north of the site is a 2-storey dwelling house. And you'll see from these pictures there are a number of windows that face south towards the site, which the outlook of which is to some extent restricted at the moment by the existing building and some vegetation. They do also have windows facing east and west. I think there's a distance of approximately up to 5.5 metres between the two buildings here. And the determination that's been made is that the impact would not be so significant from this building to this building to justify refusal of the application. Yeah, sorry, I'll go back. I'll just leave you with the image of the front elevation. The recommendation is conditional permission, and you'll see the list of conditions outlined in the report. Thank you.
Thank you. Would the deputies, Ms Kimberly Barrett, Mr Chris Flint and Councillor Gerald Verner Jackson, please come to the table? Thank you. You each have 6 minutes. We start off with Ms Barrett.
Thank you. The role of the planning system is to implement sustainable development. This application claims to fulfil the economic, social and environmental facts of the National Policy Planning Framework, but it doesn't do so. There are a couple of reasons. Some of them may have changed, though, because of the new amendments. One of the major factors we find is a lack of solid agreement for affordable housing, which goes against PCS 19 of the Portsmouth Plan. Also, inadequate parking provision for any new units and lack of consideration as to the current residents of the area regarding off-street parking, according to the Parking Standards Transport Assessment. The amount of spaces that are there at the moment that have been asked for, that definitely won't help our area at all. I actually used to live, and I still live a couple of roads away from where it is. And one of the spaces that was found was in my road. And to be honest, I don't know when they found that because we've never had a space. Everyone in our road has, bar our household, have 2+ cars, and they have to park all around the area. So I don't understand how that could be mitigated, to be honest. Issues with this development producing significant additional traffic movements in an already dangerous, fast-moving main road that has no way to improve the current situation, let alone more traffic movements to and from the site. We're saddened with the loss of vegetation and trees on site that provide a vital service in a very heavily polluted area. The lack of suitable outdoor communal area for 6 of the units to share. Just to go back, really, we wanted to just say that the site is next to a busy road, and the development probably will generate a significant additional traffic movement. This is acknowledged by the applicant and stated by them in documentation that is provided. Residents in and passing through Milton know that the points stated here already create significant problems that we face on a daily basis. A traffic survey completed by us local residents and councillors in November 2014 and confirmed by an expert showed that junctions in the area were already near or at capacity. Since that traffic survey was completed, we have had significant development in Milton and the surrounding areas, as well as further potential development acknowledged, which includes the Tesco Superstore, development of residential homes at St Mary's, the Crayfern development, as well as the development ongoing at Goldsmith Avenue, St James, and possibly in the future Kingston Prison. The developer acknowledges that this development will increase traffic movement, causing potential issues for any new residents. A couple of doors down from the Brewers Arms, one of the residential properties has actually had their wall smashed into 2 or 3 times over the last few years due to the fact of dangerous driving, speeding, problems when you turn from Warren Avenue into Milton Road, and also coming in from Priory Crescent. There have been a number of accidents as well in the last sort of 10 plus years. So it is quite a dangerous area. Also, in regards to the amount, it comes back to the car parking spaces, but I find it difficult to see if all the car parking spaces are full up, how they're going to turn around and come back out. It's going to be very difficult. Also to add, in regards to the communal space at the rear, it's very small and inadequate. It's a very small piece of land with one retained tree and situated right next to the parking spaces, so it seems very unfeasible for anywhere between 6 or 12 people to use the area. A real issue that I've spoken about a number of times, and I know has been acknowledged at full council, is the fact that there is no affordable homes to be provided. For too long in the city, developers have got away without providing this, and the city desperately needs this due to the fact of all these different things going on in the area. To plead poverty for paying too much for the land or other excuses is no longer suitable. The committee needs to consider the needs of the city and demand that a developer provide the affordable home provision. The affordable housing requirements are relevant for schemes where there is a net increase of more than 7 units. Therefore, according to the Portsmouth Plan, this development should be providing at least 20 to 30% of the housing stock as affordable homes, so probably at least one of these properties. The council stated in the Portsmouth Plan that it's seeking to provide around 420 affordable homes per year for the next 15 years up to 2027, yet that number has recently dropped, according to the council's website, to 150 affordable homes per year. According to PCS 19 of the Portsmouth Plan, this development could and should at least contribute towards that target, as that is what the people of this city need. To allow this to go through without any affordable homes is to the detriment of the residents of this city and gives further excuse and opportunity for developers to use a get-out-of-it clause to not provide the legal requirements set in stone by the city. To say that there may be a requirement for a modest financial contribution in regards to SIL is not enough. Please make the Portsmouth Plan worth the paper it's written on and get developers to take it seriously. Our area and surrounding areas have lost out on a decent amount of affordable homes, such as Kingston Prison and Crayfern, plus many others, which then puts further pressure on areas such as housing benefit, council house lists, and the cost of providing B&Bs and hotels, which, with continuous cuts to the council budget, is money we cannot afford to lose. Please enforce this policy and set an example to the developers. It has been noted that the applicant is trying to not provide the recommended standard provision of parking spaces. Residents that used to go to this pub can hand on heart say that other than football match days, it is mainly used by people that live in the area and who have walked to the pub. If anyone did drive, they would have struggled to park locally anyway because of the parking issues. Displacement
you have
from
had
this...
your 6 minutes. Can you draw to a conclusion, please?
Yeah. Displacement from this bill with the lack of car parking spaces is going to cause further issues to already crowded streets. To use Prospect House as an example regarding the lower provision of parking spaces compared to flats is a crafty yet unwelcome move. Prospect House has 8 flats yet only 5 spaces. Residents in the building have said that they and visitors have had to park inside roads and have often had to park a long way away. Parking is a huge issue in Milton and across the city and has been highlighted many times. So please, if you can consider some of these issues and either dismiss or defer or put some recommendations in, it would be completely welcome.
Thank you, Ms Barrett. Councillor Vernon-Jackson, I know you have another meeting at 1:30. Would you wish to go next? No, I would be happy to hear. Right. Mr Flint, thank you. You have 6 minutes.
Chair, members, thank you for the opportunity to speak today. I have a short statement in support of the application. The application that you have before you today is a result of a substantial amount of work with the pre-application back in May 2017, where the principle of redevelopment for residential use was agreed with officers. Further to our application submitted, we have also undergone further changes to establish the best possible design for the site. The application has been submitted taking account of both local and national planning policies, with the proposed apartments having been designed to reflect the national room standards and going beyond these standards to provide a high quality standard of living and environment with ample parking, landscaping and amenity space. not forgetting the location and the ability to use Milton Park as additional space. Altogether, these enhance the principle of redevelopment. The articulated frontage and varied roof levels and shape help to give visual interest to the proposed development. The building would be also set back from the main road frontage, ensuring that it would not have an over-dominant presence within the street scene, along with no loss of amenities to the adjacent properties. A high-quality palette of materials are proposed, bringing together a contemporary and traditional feel and use for these materials to establish a fresh and vibrant feel to the street scene and supporting elevations. We feel this is a good alternative use and design for a brownfield site to provide much needed housing in a sustainable quality form and location. It is respectfully requested that planning permission is approved today. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Flint. Councillor Vernon Jackson.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you very much indeed for the chance to be able to come and speak on this. I agree with much of what Kimberly has said, although I understand that the desire is there for affordable housing from the local community. The government has made clear that affordable housing for local families on low incomes to rent is not a priority, and much as I would like to be able to say we should turn it down for lack of affordable housing, we wouldn't be able to sustain an appeal on that. I think that's completely wrong, and we should be trying to provide affordable housing, but the government does not think that's a priority, and therefore I think we are scuppered on that. But I do think there are good reasons for turning this down, which I think are threefold. I think my first concern is the loss of the amenity in terms of the trees to the local community. The view from the arboriculturalists that self-seeded trees don't need protection, I think, is bizarre. That says that the whole of the new forest could be chopped down because it has no amenity value to local residents. A view that the only trees worth protecting are rows of planted cherry trees because they've been planted in a design is, I think, deeply bizarre and very worrying to hear that that is the view from the City Council. And I think we need to look further at that. So I think the loss of amenity from the loss of trees is absolutely clear and should be enough to turn this application down as it is. I think my second reason for wishing you to turn it down would be the mass and volume, and having a thumping great wall 6 metres away from your window is, I think, far too close, and I think that gives us another reason. But I think my main reason is the breaking of the council's policy on parking. I don't know when this second survey was done, but to say that you found that number of car parking places is bizarre. The point that the council had when it made this policy was that new developments should not make the parking problem worse in the local area. Now, I'm sorry, I've driven around that and talked to residents there, and the idea that on the eastern side of the road there are any spare parking places after 8 or 9 o'clock at night is laughable. It just doesn't happen. So you do get, there is an issue that there may be a few on the western side on Priory Crescent, because there's only houses on one side. But the idea that you can find all of that extra parking, I'd be very interested to see when what time of day and what day the survey was done. It looks as if they're photographs in daylight. That's not the point. The time when it's difficult is after 10 o'clock at night when people have got home. So my view is that the City Council should have the guts to stand up for the policies that it's adopted. If we have adopted an SPD to say that parking is an issue and there isn't enough, a new development should not make it worse, we should have the guts to stand up for that and say that was the right thing to do. And this application comes up with 5 parking spaces too few. Therefore, it seems to me that's not just 1 or 2, that's 5 too few, and we should turn it down. If we don't, if the committee decides to approve this, that is a green light to every developer in the city to say, just ignore the parking SPD because the City Council doesn't care about making parking worse for local residents. And I think that would be a terrible place for us to be in. I cannot understand how on earth this had a recommendation for approval. It's deeply bizarre, but I hope that it is roundly thrown out by all members unanimously.
Thank you, Councillor Burnham-Jackson. The deputies may now return to their seats because we may call upon you if we require further factual information. Members, questions about this? Councillor Stubbs.
Can the officers confirm that all the vegetation on the site, including all the trees, could be quite legally removed without planning consent?
Yeah, yes, they could. They're not protected.
Thank you.
Councillor Udi.
On the slides, could you just show me what trees were going to go? Like what the best? Is it? Are they all just in the yard?
Excuse me, you can't see it because of the image, but there is one tree to be retained at the back here, which I may have a photograph of if you just... all the trees you see in this image would go. I believe it's that tree there that would stay. Any of the other vegetation that you can see on these images would be removed. I mean, what I will say is there is a landscaping condition that would request details of the landscaping scheme for the green areas shown on the proposed plan, which could include additional tree planting, and it would be for the council to approve that landscaping scheme as part of a condition.
Thank you.
Councillor Stagg.
Can you clarify for me, there is a building existing to the north of the proposed building, yes, already?
Yes.
And how far back is the new building set from the road?
I could probably...
What I'm getting at is, if there's a building to the north, have you measured the angle of the sun, particularly in winter time, because that building to north is going to get no light, because the angle of the sun in winter time is only about 15.4 degrees above the horizon?
Yeah, this is probably the best image to show you, this one on screen here. So it shows you that the setback of the building from the main road and the setback of number 168. There is the existing building, to some extent being two-storey, does restrict light to that building. This building would come further back into sight, and that is acknowledged at a higher height. But this building doesn't just have windows facing south, it also has windows facing west and east. And we haven't had a specific shadow diagram prepared as part of this application. We've made a judgment from an officer level.
Well, I went on a site visit to another property in my ward, which hadn't had the angle of the sun measured, and when we actually measured it, it meant that the house next door had no light whatsoever. So it's essential, I think, that you go and measure the angle of the sun, particularly in winter time, because if a building is going to get no light for about 4 or 5 months in the year, it's not worth living in.
Any questions from other Councillor Elcombe.
Yeah, 2 questions. The first one is, could you confirm that national legislation states that any development of 10 properties or less doesn't require to provide sociable housing? Is the first one?
Yes, that's right. Yeah, it's a government policy which has overridden the council's policies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the second one, could you go to the plan of the parking spaces? That's the one. Obviously, the gap between the parking spaces and the building, I can't quite read it, but we don't want vehicles backing out onto the main road, so I guess the space on the end is to allow a 3-point turn.
Yeah, that's right. There were 9 spaces proposed, but they've actually removed one to allow cars to reverse. Yeah.
My question is what is to prevent one of the residents filling that space and preventing people from doing a 3-point turn?
Well, we have got, just bear with me, I'll check the condition wording. I think the wording of the condition requires a parking space to be provided as per the plans, so it would, I guess, be an enforcement matter if we were made aware that cars were parked inappropriately on the wrong part of the site.
Any other questions? Councillor Wood.
I'd like to ask about the parking service. I notice more than one is done. What are the rules on this? Can a developer keep doing surveys until they get the result that they want? And do we know about the surveys before they happen, or can they go out Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday and find no parking spaces, go out on a Friday and find there's some, and then only tell us about that survey, and then it looks like that there's some parking?
No, what I can ask Peter's quite happy to take that one, I think.
Yeah, there are very specific guidelines about how the parking surveys should be done, particularly in respect of residential development. We require them to be done overnight on 2 consecutive evenings between 2 o'clock at night and 5 o'clock in the morning, and they need to consider spaces available within a 400-metre walking distance of the site. That's not a radius of 400 metres, it's a 400-metre walking distance along the roads. They have to take pictures of all of the spaces that they find and submit those to us in a report. They need to do it consistently over the 2 days. Yeah, we specify the days of the week when that happens, and they have to notify us in advance when they provide that. The initial survey that was provided didn't meet those criteria, and we rejected it and said we shouldn't rely on it. That's why they repeated it and did a second one. That second one found 25 spaces, which they submitted photographs for. I didn't agree that 12 of those spaces were practically available. They were either not big enough, or they were on restricted areas where people wouldn't be able to park during the day, or for a number of reasons. So I'm confident that they demonstrated the availability of 13 overnight parking spaces within a 400-metre walking distance of the site. Given that their shortfall in parking was only 5, I believe that if we were at appeal on that issue, we would struggle to demonstrate that case.
Councillor Stagg.
Are there any plans to put in any greenery to replace the trees that are being taken out? Because I think, as Kimberly said, it's a very, very busy road. The city is already suffering from increasingly deteriorating, if that makes sense, air quality, and trees obviously taking carbon dioxide and give out oxygen. So the more trees we have, the better.
If you look at condition 8, which is on page 20 of the report, we have required a landscaping scheme to be submitted, which would include the species and spacing of trees and shrubs to be planted. So that would need to be approved by us as the council, so we could insist on additional planting if we felt it necessary.
Councillor Horton.
How tall was the original building? Because I think it looks flat and boxy, doesn't it?
Yeah, just bear with me. I think on one of your handout sheets, 8.5 metres approximately, and the proposed building is up to 11.5 metres. There should be a yeah. There should be the last of the large plans on your pack.
Do you have a supplementary question to that, Councillor Horton?
No, thank you.
Are there any other questions from members? Yes, please. Councillor.
My question, I'm not sure it's a planning matter, but is it proposed that the parking spaces would be allocated to specific flats, in which case people then would be buying some of the flats knowing that there was no parking space?
It's not something we can control from a planning point of view. I would expect that they would probably be allocated because of how they'd want to manage those flats, but we wouldn't control that.
I just ask Mr. Flinter, do you know of whether there will be a planning, a parking arrangement linking specific flats to specific places?
Normally on a lease plan, on a purchase, a parking space does come along with the apartment. If you arrive to purchase and there's no spaces left, unfortunately you're just buying it without a space.
Thank you. If that concludes the questions, comments from members. Councillor Donna Jones.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Following on from the debates from members of the public, and I'm very grateful to them coming along, and particularly the points made by Councillors Vernon Jackson and by Kimberly Barrett, for which I have a lot of empathy. Unfortunately, I think this planning committee is probably not the right place for some of those frustrations and very valid points to be made. It was actually to the planning minister and the department or the ministry now for housing, planning and communities and local government, because it is in fact the government that need to empower us to be able to enforce the points made by Ms Barrett and by Councillor Vernon Jackson. My fear is that if we were to refuse this application today, based on the points made, some of which I think are valid points and some which I agree with slightly less, it would simply be overturned. All we're doing is delaying the developer by 3 months and costing ourselves, tens of thousands of pounds in a fine, and that would therefore have a further detrimental impact on the people of Portsmouth. In terms of the trees, I think it is sad when we lose any trees. I think the point the tree officer was making was not that we should not care about any unseeded trees in the city. I think far from that. Just he was saying these are not any specific rare specimen. I think that's the point in which it was. That's where I interpreted it when I read it. And PCS 13, the Green of Portsmouth, I do get the points, particularly that Councillor Stagg has made about what positive impact trees can make, but I certainly don't think there are any grounds with very inferior specimens of trees on that site to refuse on that basis. Parking, PCS 17, okay, yeah, we know. I mean, I always like a minimum of 1 for 1. We're almost there. I think the on-street parking surveys, depending on which day of the week you do it, the points that have been made, I think it is very questionable. But nonetheless, I could also agree with our highways officer here today that actually that would not be grounds for refusal. And again, we would lose that on appeal. And at least there are some parking spaces there, almost 1 for 1. The density of the development, which is raised by Councillor Vernon Jackson, PCS 21, actually, I think, we need to bear in mind there has been a previous permission on this site for 8 flats back in 2011. So there has been a kind of precedent set there. And in terms of the density of the development and the way it looks and the space standards all being adhered to, I don't think we've got any grounds to object on any of that. And I think the development from that perspective looks good. And you could argue that the impact on the local amenity is also not that great with it being a pub. So for some people that live opposite it, they may prefer to live opposite flats as opposed to a pub. And the PCS 19, the affordable housing, I mean, we've already been advised by the planning officer here that this is not particularly triggered here through the NPPF, but we do also need to bear in mind that this does work in conjunction with PCS 10, which is the commitment that this council has, and in fact the legal position this council has, a requirement to deliver homes across the city, be that affordable or private. So, with all of that in mind, and because of the national situation, which I also don't agree that planning inspectors can trump our decisions and everything else, I've lobbied the government over the last 4 years on that specifically. We are where we are, and on that basis, Chairman, I will be proposing the application.
Other comments from members? Councillor Elcombe.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I agree with most of my colleagues' comments. I think the only thing I would add is obviously a comment was made about the community amenity in the rear of the premises in terms of how much green space there is, etc. But we should, of course, remember it's only 50 to 75 yards away from Milton Park, and if there was a deficit in trees, I'm sure a condition could be put where the developer plants another couple of trees in the park maybe. I think there are ways around replacing lost trees. There is obviously a facility there from people who buy these flats to go and take advantage of a green open space. a green lung to the city, and I will second my colleague's recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Elcombe. Any other comments or proposals? No. We have therefore one proposition on the table, which is for the officer's recommendation proposed by Councillor Jones, seconded by Councillor Elcombe. Can I see all those in favour? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Right. That is 7 people in favour. Against? 1. It is there, the proposition is therefore carried, and you have planning permission for the flats on the site. Thank you very much to the deputies. Thank you very much, members. We now come to the item on Her Majesty's Prison, Milton Road. If Mr. Winsborough and Councillor Sanders can make their way to the table. And can we have nail the right?
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Okay, this planning application is in Baffin's ward, and it was an application made with the authority in October 2017, and it's for the change of use of part of the prison site to B8 storage, and the change of use application is necessary because of their different use classes. Members will recall the site, its location central to the city, Baffin's ward, and we can see the existing prison form there in Milton Road and St Mary's Road, and the roundabout to which it addresses. Okay, this is actually some photographs from within the site. Since the residential planning scheme has been approved, the developers have progressed to do their demolition of all of the new additions and buildings that weren't listed on the site, and we can see that they've cleaned and tidied and demolished parts of the site which were not necessary to be retained. The planning application, when it came in, related to the whole of the site, and during the life of the application the developers reduced the amount of land or floor space down to 121 square metres to be used for storage, and these 3 floor plans highlight in green where the land to be used as storage is located, so how the 121 square metres forms. When the application originally came in, it was for the whole of the site, and so we received a number of objections from the residents, which are detailed in the report, but from which the applicant has reduced the size and scale of the scheme down to what we have before us today. So 121 square metres is approximately 1% of the actual site, and if you look to page 63 of your report, tabulated there, you'll find the actual floor spaces and reflection there in relation to the scale of the scheme. Here's some photographs just detailing to members the type of storage that's being used just for city and country's purposes. As they go through the process of readying the prison for conversion, there's a number of equipment, furniture and the like, which is needing to be stored and used across other city and country sites across southern England where they have other developments. The proposal is just for the use of storage for city and country. It's not for residents in the city to come and go and use the site or sublet elements of the prison for storage purposes. As a consequence, we don't have an objection from Highways in relation to the proposal, and you'll see in the conclusion here that we're recommending conditional permission with a specific condition limiting the use to city and country or other future successors in title. So the application before you is for conditional permission.
Thank you. Mr. Winsborough, you have 6 minutes.
Perfect, thank you. Good afternoon, Chair and members. My name is Richard Winsborough and I head up the planning team at City and Country. I've been involved in finding a new life for the prison since we purchased it back at the end of 2014, early 2015. I trust you all received my letter on Monday evening, which explained that our intentions remain focused on delivering a residential future for the prison. We've been working hard behind the scenes, looking at the existing consent and all the costs and inputs to understand how we can tackle the sizable deficit. There is no one simple solution, and the process and discussions with officers and councillors, including Councillor Sanders to my right, are taking time to conclude. In the meantime, it's important to regularise the way in which the site is being used now, and that includes the use of part of the cell block for storage, which is the application in front of you today. Now, since submission, as the case officer helpfully pointed out, we've been addressing points raised by officers. In particular, there's a point in the officer's report asking the question as to whether the application was needed in the first place. I think it's worth just reminding everybody about the fact that it was originally included the office space in the gatehouse, but working with officers, they very helpfully advised us that this was in the continued use of the space from when the prison was open, so there was no need to actually seek consent for that. Likewise, as the case officers mentioned, it included external storage, it included the whole site, which triggered specific concerns from officers, including the highways officer. These aspects were both removed, so that obviously has dramatically reduced the scale of the application. But it was felt that it was important and sensible to see the application through to the end anyway, and obviously hence we're here today discussing it. Very much agree, it will come as no surprise to hear me say, very much agree with the contents and conclusions of the officer's report, so I'm not going to go over all of those points again. The highways officer, it was reported, has made several comments, although I note that there is no objection, and I'm just glad that the officers came to a sensible and realistic conclusion. This is very much a city and country site. We're using it as part of our regional office, and in fact the officers, when they're on site, saw the coming and going, literally, two movements of the city and country vehicle that is used to move the various bits around from storage, and that was, I can confirm, that was the only movement that week that was generated by the storage. Something that was brought into the spotlight only last week by the devastating fire at the Glasgow Arts School, a Grade A, our Grade 1 listed building, are the risks associated with empty listed buildings, even when they're in the process of being restored, as was the case in Glasgow. We are committed and we will continue to work hard to find a solution to deliver residential on this site, which will not only deliver housing to the city, but will save, excuse me, will save the listed buildings and provide an important heritage regeneration scheme in the heart of Portsmouth. This application goes some way to helping that aim, as will the other current applications that's with officers at the moment with regards to the airsoft activities on site. Finally, I'm often asked, and so I thought it would be helpful if I tackle it head on, I'm often asked why we're actually still involved if there's such a deficit on the site, and the simple answer is passion. Passion to help save these important buildings. There are definitely easier ways for a company to make money, but none actually give the levels of satisfaction that flow from tackling these complex projects. There are significant financial challenges with this site, but there are ways to overcome them. They will take time to discuss. They will involve some difficult questions. They will also involve some very difficult answers, I'm sure. But I can assure you that we won't be giving up, and our vision remains to deliver a residential future for the mansion. Until the next time, because I'm sure there will be a next time that I'm sitting here, thank you very much for your time, and I look forward to listening to your debate.
Councillor Sanders, you have 6 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to start by referring to one of the representations on page 59. It says, and I quote, "An application for change of use of this site after going through public consultation and years of closure sends an incredibly strong message as to the way in which the developer regards the views of the local Baffins community." That is not a compliment, I have to say, and is the main reason I am here. It is also reflected as a result, due to the nature of this application. Local people in the Baffins area are a combination of bemused, confused, frustrated and angry at what has not gone on since this committee approved 231 flats for the site several months ago, and that's reflected in this application. It wasn't only local residents who objected to the application. I asked Ms O'Malley to refer it to the original version to the planning committee because I thought it stank as well, as being the only thing the only way in which actually traffic in the already busy one-way Baffins and Milton Road system would go up. I also said at the time that if it was ancillary development, I didn't see the need to object. In fact, I didn't see the need to do anything. So it is with some interest that I see that on page 63 of the report, it talks about permitted development. And that's the frustration we have here, and why I'm here to make a comment rather than an objection. The truth is that the comments on page 63 of the report are totally right. They could do this anyway. Through permitted development. However, City and Country have chosen to be transparent, and as a result, they should be subjected to the transparency of this committee. And so I would suggest a few comments, if I may, as a result of that. The first is that I think City and Country need to be straight with local residents and with elected councillors about what the future of the site is, what their plans are, what their commitments are. If residents don't know, it's not just residents who've been complaining. Formerly the two elected councillors for the Baffins ward have tried to ask City and Country 4 months, 4 meetings. We didn't get far. It's almost as if somebody told them that they shouldn't speak to us. And that is a level of frustration we felt, a level of frustration local residents felt. I do not believe planning officers would be that stupid to ask developers not to talk to us, but it is most noticeable that since the change in administration, we have been able to talk to City and Country, and I think that's generated some more openness, and I think some openness here today, and that is very, very pleasing. We all want to work together to make sure this site works, not just for the benefit of developers, but for the benefit of people Portsmouth people who want to be able to afford homes, and also for the wider benefit of the city as well. And I look forward to continuing to work with City and Country on that. Another comment I will make is around page 61 of your report, whereby it talks around all the buildings that have been demolished and were used as storage before demolition, which again highlights some of the confusion that exists. It's almost as if somebody broke into the prison to demolish the buildings. It is a long list. All of the buildings were demolished by City and Country. And as a result of them demolishing those buildings, understandably, because that was the original planning, application, they're now asking to use the cells. I would respectfully suggest to City and Country a little bit more long-term planning in the future would be very, very helpful. So, therefore, whilst I would love to ask colleagues to refuse this application, on the grounds of they could do these anyway, on page 63, I see no planning reason to turn this down, sadly. If colleagues can come up with one, I'd be delighted. And I think local people will be delighted as well, not purely for planning, but also for the message that it sends to the developers of the prison about the need to be clearer in future about the long-term site, the role the prison has, the role they play, be realistic with local people about what is going on. And on that basis alone, I cannot find a reason to comment about refusing this application. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Well, 6 minutes and 7 seconds. Questions? Councillor Stagg.
Is there a time limit on this? And secondly, what sort of stuff is being stored? I mean, is it noxious, etc., or is it...
Okay, so in terms of a time limit, no, we're not putting a time limit in relation to this use. It's a very low-level use, and through the conditions and the plans, we're able to limit the exact floor space, the square meterage, and the nature of the use being only tied to City and Country or successors in title. In terms of the actual storage, it's actually windows, doors, chairs, furniture, office equipment, and the like. And the issue around why they're making the application, when they did undertake the storage activity in the past, it was an ancillary use to the prison use. And as members would be aware, the prison use has ceased. Now, while that continues to be the lawful use of the site, the developer is just seeking to confirm that they are going to continue a B8 use in this limited amount of floor space. So I hope that clarifies that.
Supplementary, Councillor Stagg.
Thank you. My concern is as Councillor Sanders has said, local residents are concerned. You know, it's 2 years. If this is going to go on for another 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, I mean, although there's people in the building, which I appreciate, that helps as far as protecting a protected site, there's still going to be deterioration. Having gone in there, you know, where they've ripped out lots of stuff, they're open wounds, if you like, which can be easily sort of eroded. So is it possible to put a time limit on this so that work can start on building the houses that we need, and which the local residents, rather reluctantly, I suppose, have accepted?
The planning permission, the residential scheme, which was considered back in June 2016, continues to run with the land. And in considering this application and recommending conditional permission, we realise that it in no way harms the ability of City and Country or other people progressing to deliver the residential scheme in its current form as approved. And we've been working with them towards the discharge of those conditions. It would also enable potentially other schemes to come forward, to deliver a good residential scheme on the site as well. So the site and its, use as a residential site, really that principle's been established by way of the 2016 permission, and that doesn't fall away when we look at this B8 use.
Yes, another
I
supplementary.
thought planning permission was only for 3 years. So if it's... Is that
if a planning application is granted, it must be commenced within 3 years. Councillor Stubbs.
Yeah, thank you. Just, I don't think it's actually in the officer report. I think it may be in the letter we received from the applicant. And I acknowledge this is probably not something we can take into account in our determination, but just for my background information. There's a reference in that to this proposal reducing the liability for community infrastructure levy. Could someone explain quite how that works?
Yeah, so under our SIL regulation charging scheme, there is certain exemptions, and the property, when it was first acquired, was being used as a prison, so it had a use, and therefore there was a certain SIL liability. That use ceased when, at a period of time, sort of some 3 years later, and that meant that the benefits that there were in terms of SIL charging disappeared, and therefore the SIL liability significantly increased.
Supplementary?
Well, the way I read the letter that we received is that from the applicant's perspective, one of the benefits of the application is it reduces the SIL liability. And you're telling me that the SIL, I can understand what you're saying, that the SIL liability may have increased. I think I can understand that, because we saw a similar thing with Zero House, where it was used for storage, and that meant that in effect there was no SIL liability on the existing part of the building. Are we in a similar situation?
The purpose of this application for the applicants, from the applicant's point of view, is to put them back in a position where there was a use, and therefore take their SIL liability down to the lower charge.
Yeah, okay, I'm clear now. So it is as I thought, but just want to be clear on that.
Are there any other questions from members? No, we move to comments. Councillor Stubbs, you had your hand up first.
I mean, I think, you know, as we've discussed, really, this is actually quite a trivial application, and I can't see any reason not to approve it. I also, unlike Councillor Sanders, I'm not scratching around for a reason to refuse it anyway. I don't see any great problem with a small area of a building being used for storage. I must say, though, by way of comment, I mean, we've had Councillor Sanders coming and telling us how he regrets the empty building, but surely when the planning application was going through, he didn't want a residential scheme. Well, you should be happy then, because you've got an empty site, and that's what that meant. And on a similar matter, I think it is worth noting, just to recollect that there was a great deal of debate about affordable housing, and I didn't see the viability assessment, I should say, but the implication was that when developers come along and make a case that affordable housing renders an application unviable, that they're always hiding something and it's never the truth. Well, here we have a scheme where we have no affordable housing and it still isn't viable, and I think that's something we need to bear in mind.
Councillor, so you're proposing. Thank you. Councillor Udy? Right, okay. Councillor Jones?
Thank you very much. I am going to start with one comment made by one of the deputies, Councillor Sanders, which I feel obliged to respond to, having been leader of the council up until 35 days ago and the cabinet member with responsibility for planning, regeneration and economic development. So therefore the councillor that would have been meeting with and has met with developers such as City and Country, and in fact I think I met with them once, it may have been twice, and I haven't met with them or had any contact with them until the letter on Monday evening. For at least 18 months, it may be 2 years. They came to see us very early on when they acquired the site. I'm sure there have been ongoing officer discussions since then. When I did meet with them, Claire Upton-Brown was with me, and I feel obliged to put on record that at no point ever would I ever dream of recommending or advising or telling a developer not to respond to any councillors who may contact them, be they ward councillors or whatever political party. Absurd suggestion, which has caused offence. Anyway, moving on. I am sceptical about this. I'm going to be honest. I've spoken about my comments in the press recently, over in the last year, around this particular site. Deeply frustrated it hasn't come forward, but I do have empathy with the developer. I appreciate that City and Country did not want to acquire Kingston Prison. They had to take it as part of a package when they bought a prison they did want elsewhere, I believe in the West Country, when they negotiated that with the Ministry of Justice. I appreciate it's an awkward site. I appreciate it's not straightforward, but it is a significant site in our city, and I am deeply frustrated that here we are, 2.5, 3 years later, still nowhere further forward, and that's not where we should be. I find it hard to believe that a developer and a substantial landlord as City and Country would travel all the way into a peninsula such as Portsmouth simply for 119 square metres of storage, when they surely must have places around southern England they can get to far easier, and they're using less than 1% for storage. It doesn't sit comfortably with me at all, and I'm very pleased that we have had the recommendation from our planning officers that this should be tied, the storage should be tied, and for the successor in title only for storage, and this shouldn't therefore then become a commercial alternative uses for this site, because actually that wouldn't be under permitted development, it would be an entirely new planning application. My concern, if I'm being completely upfront about this, is that by getting that one small section at the front of the near the entrance as storage, that they will then come back further and on appeal would say to a planning officer, but it hasn't caused any issue, this is already acceptable to the council on one part of the building, so why would it not be on others? And I think that in that letter that I received on Monday, and I did respond to the gentleman that sent it on behalf of the country and said on behalf of the company and said thank you to him, it did say this is going to be a temporary proposal only. In other words, leading us down the path of we are working on a bigger scheme. I really, really hope that's true, because this is all about good faith now. This is about good faith between the developer and the City Council, maybe not actually us as a planning committee, but the wider City Council, about good faith that they have written to councillors saying that this would be a temporary proposal only, and that they are not therefore, I hope, trying to set a precedent to get an alternative commercial usage for this site beyond residential or the prison usage itself. From a planning perspective, absolutely no reason not to support this. It would go through on appeal, we know that. So I will be supporting it, but reluctantly and with that good faith note for the developer to take back, please.
I assume you're therefore seconding Councillor Stubbs's proposal. Thank you. Any other comments from members? No. In which case we move to the vote. Those in favour, please show. That is unanimous. Thank you very much. We now come to the item on Arundel Court Primary School, and I would like Miss Gregory, Mrs. Hathaway, Mrs. Erickson to come to the table, please, together with Mr. Spencer.
Councillor Mason, sorry.
Yep.
Can I just use the toilet?
If the people could move to the table very slowly, because if Councillor Udi is not in the room when this commences, she does not have a vote. I don't wish to disenfranchise her, so if you'll move very slowly, and I will continue talking until she comes back. So I would first of all like to thank the deputies on this one for their courtesy in not objecting to us taking Kingston Prison before this one. It was most helpful. I don't wish to empty the room, Councillor Elcombe. Those members of my own group who have heard me singing would probably advise you. Okay. Whilst we're waiting, are there plans which need to be handed out to members? Okay, if we can use the time to hand those out, it'll expedite matters. Right. If the officer could introduce the planning application, please.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, members. The application site relates to Arundel Court Primary School. It's located just to the east of Holbrook Road, to the north of Rundle Street and to the south of Finan Street. The site has an area of approximately 1.4 hectares and comprises the main school building. You've got a nursery, you've got a library block, to the north of the site, a nursery block to the south, and you have some temporary classroom structures also located on the site. To the north of the site, as you can see from the images, is an area of green open space. It's currently used as playing fields for the school. Pedestrian and vehicular access is granted via Northam Street, which is a cul-de-sac and pedestrian thoroughfare. And the surrounding area largely comprises a mixture of residential uses with retail uses further to the southwest. The above slide shows some of the images of the existing site layout. Here you'll see the Northam Street access. The images on the right show the existing playing fields and obviously views down Finan Street from Holbrook Road. Other images show some of the hard standing spaces within the school and some of the temporary classrooms as well. The proposal is for the construction of a new 3-storey building, associated landscape and external works, access and car parking. The proposed school would be sited along Fining Street in the area of green open space that currently serves as a playing field. And the construction of the school would enable Arundel Court Primary School to increase its capacity from 525 pupils to 630 pupils. Staff is predicted to increase from 126 to potentially a maximum of 135. In terms of siting, the applicant has been engaged through pre-application discussions. The school was asked to consider alternative options for the siting of the school building. It's important to note that the major constraint to that is this blue line here, which represents a main sewers access that runs through the site. Other alternatives for siting the school were considered to have a greater impact on trees located along Holbrook Road and would raise some concerns in terms of accessibility issues and safety for students and staff. The school in its proposed location to the north of the site is therefore considered to be best suited. The above images just show how the phasing of the development would take place. First of all, the site compound would be established to enable the construction of the school, first of all. The physical state of the existing school building and the presence of asbestos means that a full decant of students into temporary accommodation during the demolition and construction phases isn't feasible. So once the new school is constructed, the existing school would be demolished. There would be site protection measures as well here to obviously provide safety. And the site would be completely reinstated after that with an approximate time frame of 64 weeks to complete the development. Internally, the ground floor would consist of a range of spaces, including small hall, main hall, kitchen, ancillary storage. You have a number of classrooms here, predominantly with views to the east and to the west. The first floor would again consist of a staff room here to the north, a series of classrooms, associated toilet facilities, as well as the third floor as well, which accommodates the majority of the actual classrooms, some lab technical spaces as well. Externally, the proposed school has been designed to be resilient in terms of its energy performance and its space requirements. The school would be able to achieve a very good BREEAM rating, which the LPA considers to be acceptable. The block of the building would mainly consist of an L shape with 3 stories here, and to the east then you would have a single story that would form the kitchen and hall. The first story of the building would be finished in external brickwork to provide robustness against ground floor activity associated with the school. Upper floors would be clad in a mixture of render panels, varying in colours, yellow and blue, to represent the school's logo and branding. And you would also have some new signage on the north and eastern elevations to announce the school and its location in the community. The above 3D images help to illustrate how the school would appear in the context of the street scene. Proposed landscaping scheme would help to soften the urban edge of the development along Finan Street. The use of coloured rendered panels again help to break up the massing of the elevations and promote the school and its place in the community. In terms of access, general vehicle movements, the drop-off and pick-up would remain at Northern Street as is existing, as would the primary pedestrian entrance. A new service entry would be created to the far east of the site. This entrance would provide car parking for 2 disabled spaces, and would also provide service access for food and refuse and emergency vehicles to be able to enter the site, turn and egress safely. There is a proposed entrance to the new school building located on Finan Street, but that would be strictly for visitors to the school. In order to enable the construction of the school, associated access and comprehensive landscaping scheme has been proposed. Further to the demolition of the existing school building, the centre of the site would be returned to soft play areas in accordance with Sport England criteria. Large majority of trees to the east of the site along Holbrook Road would be retained, with the exception of 2 trees in this location that would enable construction access. 6 individual trees and a group of trees would be removed from the Finan Street frontage. The proposal would result in the loss of 9 trees in total, and these trees have been rated Category B to Category U, which is moderate amenity value to very poor. In order to mitigate the loss of the trees, 10 new trees have been proposed to be replanted, as well as a new hedgerow along the Finan Street frontage, as well as in the site and reinstating the Holbrook Road construction access. Representations received raised objection to the development in regards to the impact of the proposals on neighbouring amenity. The above sectional detail helps to illustrate how the new school building would interact with Chatfield House. In respect to these views, there is a separation distance of 22 metres. The 2 buildings would be comparable in height at approximately 23 metres. And the proposals are therefore not considered to have a significant impact in terms of a loss of privacy or a sense of enclosure. And as much as feasibly possible, careful consideration has been given to orientate classrooms to the east, west and south of the site to avoid any overlooking impact. Just to conclude, in light of the specific site constraints, the proposed development is considered to be best suited in its location. The loss of trees is not encouraged. However, there is a comprehensive landscaping and tree planting scheme that would be secured by condition. The school would achieve a BREEAM rating of very good, which is in line with national and local planning policies. And the proposed development would also enable the provision of additional school places for the local community and would also enable wider use of the facilities. In light of this, the recommendation is for conditional permission. There is a full host of conditions at the back of the report. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ms Gregory, Mrs Hathaway and Mrs Erickson, you have 12 minutes between you. Use it as you wish. Right. Yes.
Views from the bedroom window, the back gate, the garden. Oh, sorry.
That's it.
That's better.
That top picture there is dead straight opposite our bedroom window. Every time we open our curtains and we go in the garden, we see them beautiful trees. All we see is trees and the sky. It's beautiful. I've lived there for 26 years. So we're going to be looking straight at that school. It's 3 stories high, and our building's only 4 stories high. So, I mean, you haven't got much space between the 3rd floor and the 4th floor. Not only we'll be seeing that, it would be upstairs as well. It's dead opposite. And to get rid of the trees, honestly, if you hadn't had this planned for a school to be built, you wouldn't be looking at them trees to take the trees down. It's because the school's being built. Them trees, they're beautiful trees. They're coming down. Them trees. There's a big tree just on the right, on the right there. It blooms every year and shreds its leaves every year. There's nothing wrong with it apart from the bark. The flats there on the right here, we live just here, this bit. That is dead opposite where that school's going to be built. It's a lovely area. That road is so crammed with cars and lorries and all sorts. Where's that going to go? That's going to go into Central Street. I don't know if you're going to be keeping that open, but the big lorries go down there with food and all sorts, what's going into that school. We've got no objections whatsoever for that school being built. It's where it's being built. Right opposite. It's really, it's intrusive. It really is. It's a shame, really, because I just love where I'm living. You go,
To
Bridget.
talk about the lorries.
Yeah.
I work in a school kitchen at Cottage Grove, so I know exactly what deliveries there will be each day. They'll have 2 18-ton lorries, an 18-ton lorry twice a week deliveries, and you will have 5 deliveries of ordinary fans as well, just for the school's food, because that's what I have as well. They probably have more actually because they're a bigger kitchen than I am. Will you be taking the yellow lines away and have it put yellow lines down there so there's no parking, because there's no way you'd otherwise get trucks, lorries down there. And to turn around in that corner, we just don't know how you're going to do it. So, as you know, as well as having a school that's 3 stories high, looking over us, we're going to have an 18-ton lorries coming down our road as well. We're already, if you look at the front of our building, which you've got no pictures of, all we are is flats looking at each other, and all we've got is concrete, isn't it? Concrete, car parks, bin sheds, tarmac, playing ground. That's all we've got. That's the only bit of green we've got in our area of Lamport left. And if you take that away, I don't know, children play on that weekends, school holidays, football clubs, they play on that because it's the best football, you know, from anywhere, best place to play football from anywhere,
absolutely.
for miles. So, you know, that's at that point of view, to keep people fit, you keep talking about they're all obese. Don't take the fields away then, let them have playing grounds. So I've done that one. Why not put porter cabins on there for temporary and building a brand new school? We have no issues of you building a brand new school. We'd love to see a lovely new school there. But we just think that is the wrong area to build it.
Yeah.
That's all we've got. Our opinions are is that it's the wrong, not just because it's overlooking us. It's just, it's going to take away that great big green field and the trees. 9 trees you're going to cut down just to build a 3-story. I mean, why it's 3-story, I don't know. That's what I don't understand. Why is it 3-story? Is it for cheapness? Is it, for whatever reason, which we don't know why, only because they said it's the only place they can put it. It's not the only place. It's just that it's the cheapest way to build it, because they're not touching anything else in that school, are they? No. They're not touching the mugger. They're not touching the nursery. They're not touching the Shore Start building. They're not touching anything else. They're not touching even the. There's a small little community garden that nobody goes and uses. They're not even touching that. They're touching the only green space available in Lamport to play and to look at and
it's heartbreaking. It really is.
It is heartbreaking, yeah. And that's the only objection we've got is where it's being built, not of it being built. We would like to see it being built on the original.
See, I don't know whether any of you's ever gone down there to have a look down Farden Street, and you could just exactly see just how close it's going to be.
Yeah.
Honestly, that could be the back gate. That will be just past that where the school's going to be. That's it.
And the
It's
noise
so
levels.
close.
The noise levels of Holbrook Road. We have constant traffic 24/7 in Holbrook Road, night and day.
Yeah.
Because we're by the shops. So we've got a lot of traffic on Holbrook Road. Now you're even adding more traffic into Vining Street.
Yeah.
And then we oppose that, the traffic and the height and where it's being built, that you're going to knock, that you've got to cut 11 trees down and take our view away, basically.
Yeah, I mean, we have garden parties. We have the music on in the garden.
We love our gardens.
Yeah, we take pride in our garden.
Yeah, we do. We do take
But we're just
pride
going to be
in
sat
our
in a garden,
gardens.
and boom, there is going to be the school's going to be right there. I mean, maybe take it back 50, 60 foot, whatever. But,
Yeah, whatever.
but to
I just
be
think
there, like 10,
it should
15
be
foot
built
away
in
from
the
the
original
fence.
place it's in now.
It's
It's
heartbreaking.
ideal.
It's horrible. I've been there 26 years, and I've been thinking about
I've been
this
28
since.
years.
Yeah, I've been thinking about this since we went to Aldwood Court
Yeah.
School. To
I mean,
have a
we've
look at
already got
the
flats
plans.
on top of us, so we are already built up. We've
Yeah.
got flats opposite us. You've already just built flats at the end of Vining Street on top of the community
Yeah.
centre. So it's already there overlooked on that end of the
Yeah.
road at Vining Street. Now you want to do it to us now, and we're objecting to it.
I'm going to leave you these pictures, these photos. I've wrote on the back so you can actually see. But that's it really. It's just a shame.
I'm just agreeing with all of them.
She's a bit shy this
She
one.
doesn't want to speak. You've got nothing to
But
add to
you
that.
know, when we open our front door, we're just looking straight at a bin shed. It's a bin shed.
Yeah.
That's it. And it's ugly. And then, you know, we're going to go straight into look at a school. We've got no objections, I said, as a school being built. No way. We want it built, but it's just where it is. It's just too close. You open our curtains and then we've got the school straight there. Yeah.
Okay. Are there any further points you would wish to make?
No, I've been in touch
You've got a couple of
with
minutes.
Mr McAteer since day one.
Okay.
Absolutely, through the whole life of it. I've been phoning him.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
He's
Okay,
been good.
So thank you for that deputation.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for listening.
Thank
to
you.
us.
Right. Mr Spencer.
Thank you, Mr Chair. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. As a bit of background to this, the Department of Education has surveyed the education estate throughout the country and identified those schools which are effectively life expired, those schools which carry massive maintenance burdens and will continue to be expensive buildings to run and maintain going forward. They are thermally inefficient, riddled with asbestos and no longer essentially fit for educational purposes. The government's identified a number of schools to be replaced. This is one of those as part of the government's priority school building program. The replacement school will also meet the need for a slight increase in school places arising from an emerging need in the area. The replacement of the school building accords with national policy, which states that great weight should be given to the need to expand or alter schools. The schools to be constructed using off-site modular construction. This has the benefits of reducing the construction time period. It's got the benefits of addressing noise impacts arising from conventional construction on the residents. The construction process has improved quality control, improved sustainability, and, as I said, a significant reduction in construction time. As explained in the officer's report, there are various constraints on the site. The first is, and in response to the comments that have been made, the existing school, as you can see on that image in front of you, is situated centrally on the site. It's a large, sprawling, largely single-story building. To provide temporary accommodation in other areas on the site, number one, is both prohibitively expensive for the period of the construction. There's also extremely limited space on the site. The Muga is lottery funded. It was an expensive piece of infrastructure which was installed. It's heavily used. That needs to be retained. So we're very limited in terms of the ability to provide temporary accommodation, and I think the most important consideration is that money would have to come out of the funding pot for the school, and that would then decrease the ability to produce or provide the school and might see a loss in the quality of the school materials, loss of landscaping, etc. Although the building will result in a change to the character and appearance of the site, the building's not out of place in the area. It's a 3-story building. Most of the surrounding blocks of flats are 4-story in height. Being an educational building, the floor-to-ceiling height is somewhat higher, but they are, as officers have mentioned, equivalent in height. If I can make just one small correction, the height of the building is not 23 meters. I think that was a height above ordnance datum. It's a 3-story building with roughly 3-meter floor-to-ceiling, perhaps a bit more, so approximately 10 meters in height, which is similar in height to Chatfield House. The building is also situated a reasonable distance away from the block of flats to the north. It's an approximate distance of 22 meters, which will allow for sufficient sunlight penetration. Locating the building on the northern area of the site actually increases the amount of green space that can be provided on the site. The central area of the site is now opened up for the provision of playing fields, so we'll be increasing the amount of green space and increasing the amount of area which children will have to play on by approximately 1,850 square meters, which is a significant benefit in what is a dense urban area. In addition to this area, the hall and the additional studio within the school will be available to the community for out-of-hours use, which leads to additional community benefit. In respect of the access, the access on Fining Street along the northern side of the site, there's an existing maintenance access which we'll be using and improving for service access. As has been mentioned, there's not a significant amount of traffic generation as a result of these servicing trips. 2 large vehicles a week and then additional supplementary smaller vehicles will access the site. We've had the access tracked by our transport engineers. The access maneuverability is satisfactory. Vehicles will enter the site in forward gear, maneuver on site, and then exit in forward gear as well. We're not proposing the loss of any on-street parking either. So it's our view that any impact arising from accessing the northern area of the site occasionally will not result in any significant detrimental impact. If I can just touch on a number of the issues that have been raised by the objectors. In respect of the loss of light, we've undertaken shadow studies that show that there's only a very modest impact, and only on the gardens to the north of the site as a result of the generous setback distances that we have. In respect of the loss of view, we appreciate that there will be a difference in the outlook. However, we are proposing additional tree planting to the northern area of the site, and as we know, the loss of a view is not a material consideration for planning. In respect of the overall traffic impacts, pedestrian access to the site is largely unchanged. Access will be via predominantly Holbrook Street, where the parking areas have been retained. There are additional areas for pedestrian visitor access to the north of the site, but for the most part, access and arrivals and departures from the site will be unchanged. In respect of impacts on privacy and amenity impacts, we are positioning 4 classrooms facing the blocks of flats to the north. There are 3 at the top floor and a single classroom in the middle floor. On the second floor, the other spaces are studio spaces, staff rooms and administrative areas on the ground floor areas. During the day, children will be being taught their lessons. They won't be looking out of windows. They won't be looking towards the flats. These will be controlled by the school. Of course, school hours are predominantly 9 in the morning till 3 p.m. There'll be no impact as a result of impacts on privacy or an amenity over weekends, naturally, when the residents will typically be at home. In respect of noise, it's our view that the noise arising from the school operating from the site will actually be reduced. What we're doing is removing the playing area from the northern area of the site. That'll be replaced by a new, modern, thermally efficient, well-insulated, very well noise-insulated building on the northern area of the site. The playing field happening behind the site to the south of the new building will be largely screened by this new building, which will significantly reduce the amount of noise which is emanating as a result of play and activities in those outdoor spaces. The site has been used as a school for 60 years, so there's fundamentally no change in the use of the property. It's an accepted use on the site. In respect of the loss of trees, we acknowledge that there is a loss of a number of trees along Fining Road. There will be replacement tree planting, however, and the majority of trees along the site, particularly those to the west of the site, will be retained. Of those 41
Mr.
trees...
Spencer, you have had your time.
Have I had my time?
Could you go to a conclusion, please?
I've actually just reached the end of it, so that's very much all I've got to say. In summary, perhaps I can just mention that this is a clear community benefit. It's going to be a fantastic new school for children, accessible to the community for the halls and other spaces, and accordingly we respectfully request that planning permission be granted. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you for the deputations. Questions? Councillor Udi.
Hi there. It may be for the developer to answer. So can I get this right? You're only building the building there because it will cost too much money to put temporary classrooms in that area instead to rehouse the students whilst the other building is being demolished. Because there is no reason at all, from what I understand, to have that building built where it is, but trying to move the students somewhere else. So I know it's quite hard and very costly, and I just heard about the fact that if it comes out of the school's budget, they're going to have a crap education. But more the fact that, are you only building it there because that's the only space you can really put it without having to spend any more money to relocate the students?
If there are any points which you feel you need to refer to the agent, Mr. Spencer, please do so.
Okay, so the constraints of the site, as I said, are the existing sewer mains down through the middle of the site. It's a combination of the phasing issues of the development, the The proposed building has been put in that location so that it can be constructed. The existing school can be safely demolished, and obviously the design and access statement has explored alternative options for the siting of the school. It hasn't come down to money terms. What they've suggested is that orientating the building in a different location would result in the loss of more trees along this frontage, which we weren't too keen on, and would also have accessibility issues. So unless there's any further points of clarification that the agent can offer, that's the reason why the school is located where it is.
Perhaps just to say and clarify that it's certainly not budget driven. That's simply one of the factors that the ESFA needs to take into account when they're planning for new school buildings. The main constraints of the site are the main sewer. To relocate that main sewer would have been exorbitantly expensive. There are other constraints such as trees, Muga to be retained, the nursery areas. We need to also retain existing access and parking facilities. So it was a very complicated and interrelated number of considerations that informed the positioning of the site.
Okay, well, other members, questions, please. Councillor Elcombe, then Councillor Smythe.
Thank you, Chairman. My question really revolves around the parking. Obviously, our highways engineer in the report points out that the site is already oversubscribed with teacher parking. With an increased school, potentially more teachers, will be even more oversubscribed. And obviously parking is a big issue in the city, as we all know. So I'm slightly concerned as to why we're recommending conditional permission when the parking situation is going to be worse. It's not my only concern with this application, but it's the one I'll deal with first. So the narrative says teachers are leaving the classroom every 2 hours to move their cars. Well, firstly, that indicates to me it's in a residence parking scheme, which whether you can confirm for me or not. If it is, then they shouldn't be moving their cars because it's illegal. Within the zone, your 2 hours is up, you leave the zone. So I'm just a bit concerned, A, the loss of teaching time, because teachers are wandering around here, there and everywhere trying to park, and B, the fact that the site is already inadequate and is likely to become even more inadequate with the enlarged school.
So it is acknowledged that there is existing 36 car parking spaces on the site. None would be lost as a result of the proposals, but you would have 2 additional disabled spaces to the north of the site. With the increase of staff, obviously there is going to be greater demand for cars. We have suggested a planning condition for the school to submit and have a travel plan approved by the local planning authority. It is considered that in this case that the school would be able to promote sustainable modes of transport within the staff numbers, and in addition to this, given the sustainable location of the school, 10-minute walk from Southsea and Fratton train stations, bus stops along Arundel Street and Commercial Road, it is considered in this case to be acceptable.
Supplementary, Councillor Holcombe.
Thank you. How many teachers are there currently at the school for the 36 spaces? And if it's such a sustainable location, why aren't they currently using that? Why are they parking on the street?
In terms of staff, there's 126 members of staff. In terms of the sustainable modes of transport, they haven't been implementing an individual sustainable travel plan, and that's why we have suggested a condition to request this for approval prior to the occupation of the new school building.
So it's 126 staff for 36 spaces. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Smythe.
I just have a question about the replacement trees and whether there are proposals to mitigate the the mass of the front of the building with trees and greenery. Now, I did see a picture earlier on which had that on, but it says you're going to, on page 46, it says you're going to place 10, but it doesn't say where they're going to go.
This would be the Fining Street front you're referring to.
Yeah, so the majority of the trees, it is difficult because we've got the replacement trees on as well as the removal of trees, but you would see the majority of planting along the Finan Street frontage. You would have some new trees planted in here as well to mitigate the impact of the loss of the tree in Holbrook Road.
Can you use your microphone, please, Councillor Smythe?
Okay, sorry. Are there any further details of where they will go? And you've got them there on the front of the building. Thank you. That's the one I wanted to see again. Those are the proposals, are they?
Yes, that's correct. We do have a planning condition on the report that would suggest that details would have to be submitted and approved by the local planning authority. Obviously, that would be done in conjunction with the arboricultural officer, suggest suitable standards, specimen and spacing.
Councillor Stagg.
Thank you, Chair. What reasons are there for not building the new school to the south, in other words, to the right of the diagram off Arundel Street, or off Holbrook Road, which would be to the east?
The MUGA is funded by lottery funding, so through the pre-application process it became apparent that the actual use of the MUGA space wasn't going to be open to us in terms of temporary accommodation during the construction period of the school. Because of the offset requirements of the sewer main, there were limited spaces to the north of the site that we could actually accommodate, say, adequate temporary accommodation for the construction period for the scheme. And so that led us to the proposal that we have before us, which reduces the construction period in terms of the number of weeks, but actually enables the retention of the MUGA and then also the controlled demolition of the existing school. I think that the main issue for us is that the existing school is predominantly single storey, and in terms of reducing the footprint and impact of the school, they've gone for a taller scheme with a lesser footprint, however, and so therefore, releasing, I suppose, more square meterage across the site. However, it meant that we had limited opportunity in terms of looking at how educational provision could continue on the site and not be impacted. And that was one of our key considerations when looking at the pre-application.
Supplementary?
Yes, what about well, it's part of the first question. What about off Arundel Street, so that's to the south?
That's the Shore Start facility and the nursery, which are not part of the scheme or not part of the funding proposal from the Educational Funding Skills Agency.
If there are no other questions, Yes, certainly, Councillor Elcombe.
The other point that was raised in the report was by the crime design officer, who's somewhat critical of the internal layout and potential for crime to take place when it's open for community use, particularly with the access to toilets, etc. Is there any conditions being put on to allay some of those issues?
No conditions have been suggested to defer those issues.
Councillor Horton.
I don't want to over-labour the site location, but I just want to clarify my own mind. Was it impossible to build on the same footprint whilst maintaining educational provision on the site? It's not just a time thing. Is it impossible to do that?
The sheer quantity of classroom requirement in the nature of temporary buildings on the site would not have been possible.
Councillor Udy.
I went to Milton Cross School and I was the first year there, and I was housed in Penhow for a year, and so I've got kind of anecdotal evidence here. I know St Edmunds offering some playing fields, and haven't they just built something on St Edmunds as well? Am I just imagining that? It might be years old. But and there's another school across the road. Is there no way, absolutely, that children might be able to be temporarily schooled in a building that is very close to them? So we could build somewhere else, obviously, on the site instead of having that building.
The number of school places that we would need to secure on any other school would also naturally impact on their playing fields, and so the whole assessment around loss of sporting facilities and playing grounds would actually become, quite relevant to those schools and their educational provision as well. What's good about this particular proposal is that the mugger will be retained during the construction period of the new scheme, and by way of using the modular process, which is what is used, the construction period is reduced, and so that harm is reduced. So while I do appreciate there are times when we might, across the city, use other schools or share facilities, that wasn't really a solution that was going to be able to be provided for the children in this location.
Comments, members? Councillor Elcombe.
I couldn't put up with the pregnant silence whilst everybody sat.
I was wondering whether to say something from the chair.
It's like the old gunfighter, and who draws first. So I've listened to the deputation from the applicant, and being a cynical old git, I sort of struggle with his view that everything's going to be all right and everything's fine and nothing's changing. It patently is changing, not just for the residents, but for in the surrounding area, etc. And I'm still slightly uncomfortable that one of our officers has recommended refusal on quite pertinent grounds that other officers are obviously overruling that and saying they should have conditional permission. So I do have some concerns about the way this application is going. I have great sympathy with the residents and how their lives are going to be changed with a building opposite them. But I will wait and see if any of my other colleagues have anything interesting to say.
Councillor Stagg.
I have great sympathy with the residents, but I can't see an alternative. Having taught in a school where lots of things like this were happening, it is a nightmare to actually try and find the ideal place to build something without intruding on other local residents. And as long as they replace as much of the greenery as possible, you will get noise. I live 5 doors away from a school. But it's nice noise. It's kids playing. But you can put up as much soundproofing as you like, but you won't cut down on the noise. But I can't see any alternative.
Are you therefore proposing the officer's recommendation? You are. I have Councillor Horton and then Councillor Jones. Councillor Jones? All right. Okay, well, sorry. Councillor Horton, then Councillor Jones.
Okay, yes, I feel like other people that it's very mixed, and I really sympathise with the residents here, but I think we need to be really clear that actually a loss of view is not a material planning consideration, and even if we wanted to pursue that, it wouldn't be accepted by powers higher than us, and that's really difficult, to say when you're hearing people's views, but I think it's just the reality. I also agree that, and I'm aware that the parking issues have been coming up, and I think the idea of the travel plan is really good. One of the things that I did think is whether there'd be an opportunity to increase cycle provision for staff as a way of encouraging it. Is it on there? Oh, there is some. Oh, I looked for it and I couldn't find it. Okay, so in which case I endorse that. Whether that could be bigger as a way of kind of mitigating against that, especially as you are actually increasing the non-building footprint. The reason I asked the question about the maintaining school provision, because I think that is the most important point in this, and given all the explanations about why it can't be anywhere else, I can't actually think that it can be anywhere else. The smaller footprint increases the open area, which I think is a real positive. I think that the mitigating tree planting is a real positive. But most importantly, this is a rare opportunity to get a brand new building, school in the city, which will increase the educational provision, as well as increasing school places. So I would second the proposal.
Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Chairman. I wasn't intending to speak on this, but I had indicated after there was a pregnant pause. So,
Mea culpa.
Yeah, absolutely. Some of the points that we made, particularly by Councillor Udy, are good points about why the school is being cited where it is. And in my previous role, I was obviously very involved in this before it even got as far as the architects, and definitely 100% we gave consideration to whether or not there were other buildings in the surrounding area that can encompass the children whilst the school is being built. We fought very hard as a council to secure the funding through the Education Skills Funding Agency after the previous Building Schools for the Future programme was scrapped, and this school was due to be the next school built in the national programme, and it was scrapped, and this was the school that lost out, and it's terribly sad. That school has been doing an amazing job in very tight and cramped conditions. It is really tricky because if you looked at that as a blank site, you wouldn't necessarily cite the school right over at the back there. I do appreciate that. And in actual fact, the biggest impact will be on, unfortunately, the ladies that are here representing the residents in those flats right there. And I have great sympathy with them because at the moment you do have a lovely view of trees and the field. And, you know, I completely empathise, I really do. And obviously the primary school place shortage that we had in the city 3 years ago was over 1,000. We've had to do extensive school place building across the city. We've spent upwards of 40 million quid in the last 3 or 4 years doing that. The pressure's now moving into the secondary sector, and this is really one of the last of the primaries, along with the Willows being redeveloped for a reception class for Mary Rose School as well. But this is, you know, one of the last primaries that really does need a significant amount of work, and I'm pleased that the council was able to secure the funding. In terms of the planning application itself, there is obviously that impact. I can't deny that. It is there, you know, and I do feel for those residents, but it's undoubted that this is going to improve the education offering for those children tremendously. And in actual fact, I was at the school yesterday morning. It's a nightmare to park. I agree with you. Everything around there, you can't park. It is a very cramped site at the moment. I do see the points Councillor Alcombe was making are valid ones, but on balance, I'll be supporting this because it's a really important application.
Thank you. Other comments from anyone? Well, we have the officer's recommendation for conditional approval. I put that to you. Those in favour, please show. That is unanimous. Thank you very much. I now propose to have a 10-minute break. We've been going for 2 hours, and in 10 minutes' time we will come back and have a look at Ravelin
If
Park.
we move the group meeting until 7, because if you've got to go to the Midlands, you can come with me. I'm leaving here at midday. I'm driving up there. We could go, whereabouts in the Midlands you've got to go? I've got to go to Coventry to speak at an RGA conference. I'm speaking for 45 minutes, and they're paying me 300 quid, so I'm not going to say no to it. Birmingham.
Yeah, north of Birmingham.
Let's have a look on a map. That's actually, if you just want to get the train there and just come straight back. Is this to buy another shitty car that's about to... What is wrong with you? It's a false economy. You must have spent 1,500 quid, £600, £800. All you've got to do is lease a car for 2 years. You put 100 quid deposit down, you pay 100 quid at the end of the 3 years, which means an early teacher to give it back. It's You're spending nearly that anyway, pretty that.
These things cost a lot more than
They
that.
don't. Seriously. You can get a Citroen, a two-door Citroen C1 for £100 a month. Seriously.
Members, I am prepared to give Councillor Wood another minute. Can you ring him? Have you got his phone number? No. Okay. If he doesn't come back, we start without him. Councillor Wood, you almost found yourself sitting in the public gallery for this one. Members, officers, we come now to the university's application for a building on Ravelin Park. Mr. Martin Wilmore, is he here? Right. Will you come and take a seat at the table, please? If members have been briefed on this at a pre-meeting briefing, and so can we have the officers' report on Ravelin Park, please?
Good afternoon, members. Thank you, Chair. The application site is known as Ravelin Park. It is in an area of protected open space, approximately 2.6 hectares, located in the university quarter of the city. Ravelin Park occupies a prominent position in the street scene, located along Cambridge Junction. You've got Museum Road here and also Cambridge Road. Immediately adjoining the application site, but outside of the red edge of development, is the Fruin Library. You've got the William Beattie Building and also Ravelin House. The application site is located within a designated TPO and is also adjacent to the Old Portsmouth Conservation Area to the south and the Terraces Conservation Area to the east. The existing site is comprised of a large area of hard standing known as Ravelin Car Park, and there are areas of open grassland and tree planting. Furthermore, there is the Rotunda building then in this portion of the site as well. The above images just identify some of the spaces within the park. You can see the extensive car park here. You've got the existing car park entrance on Cambridge Road, the existing exit on Museum Road, and the original pedestrian entrance then off Lamport Terrace. Furthermore, these images just show the existing Rotunda building, again that entrance to Lamport Terrace. You've got the wildflower field there adjacent to Lamport Terrace, and views down Museum Road as well. The proposal is for the construction of a new sports and leisure facility and associated access, parking and landscaping works. There are a wide range of facilities provided that can be seen here. The building will be the first BREEAM outstanding sports facility in the UK, promoting the highest standards of sustainability for the city. Some of the key features include an 8-lane 25-metre swimming pool, multi-purpose sports hall, ski simulator and climbing wall. And these facilities will be accessible for members of the public, as well as enhancing the experience of students attending the University of Portsmouth. The above image just helps to highlight how the site would be laid out. The proposed sports and leisure facility with integral basement car parking will be located to the southwest of the site. 2 vehicular access points. One is already existing on Museum Road, and a new access would be created further to the east end. As part of the proposals, an extensive hard and soft landscaping scheme has been proposed. You would have the formation of a new urban plaza, as well as improvements to the existing grasslands. In terms of the principle of development, policy ST2 of the Portsmouth Plan, it's a safe policy, requires development proposals to preserve the setting of the park and provide increased public access. Furthermore, this policy identifies the existing car park of the application site as being earmarked for an appropriate university use. Policy PCS 13 of the Portsmouth Plan seeks to refuse planning permission for proposals which would result in the net loss of open space unless there are wider public benefits from the development that would outweigh the harm. You can see from the pages in front of you and also the slide above that this is the area of lost space. You would also have some gained open space along here and through the demolition of the rotunda building. The loss of open space must be considered against the wider public benefits of the development, such as improved accessibility to Ravelin Park, ecological enhancements and the provision of additional sports and recreational facilities for community use. Just a quick run through of the layout. At basement level here you'll have 72 car parking spaces including 9 disabled bays. You'll also have charging ports for 2 electrical vehicles. The pool treatment plant would be located at the basement, and you would have the climbing wall and ski simulator also located at this level. A large proportion of the activities in the new facility will be located at ground floor, 25-metre 8-lane swimming pool, 175 station gym facilities, a variety of changing facilities and studios and squash courts. And then at the upper floor you would see the main provision of sports hall facilities can accommodate 8 badminton courts, but is also multifunctional, football, basketball, volleyball, the works. The proposed roof level then you would see here is up to 700 PV panels. This would generate approximately 250 megawatts per hour and would help the building to achieve BREEAM outstanding accreditation. And the applicant has also incorporated a series of B boxes at roof level as well to encourage biodiversity on the site. The above slide just shows the proposed elevations. The building itself will consist of 3 interlinked blocks and would have varying heights and use of materials. The majority of the ground floor plane would be predominantly glazed, floor-to-ceiling glazing. The massing of the elevations would be broke up with Portland stone. These are the views from Cambridge Road and Museum Road respectively. The above images just help to illustrate how the completed development would appear. The external elevations of the phase level or the functional environmental zone arguably add the most visual interest to the building. It would consist of a systematic pattern of terracotta baguettes with slight variations in colour. And the new sports hall would be positioned to the southwest corner of the building, providing the necessary height that's required for this type of facility in accordance with Sport England guidance. This element of the building will be clad in semi-reflective architectural panels, and the lifespan of the materials proposed across the scheme is considered to be in the range of 40 to 60 years. The above visuals again illustrate how the development would appear in the context of Ravelin Park and the surrounding street scene. The top image shows the northern elevation. It would have an entirely transparent frontage to promote activity at ground floor. You would also see views looking to the north along High Street, views within the park and its relationship with existing buildings in the surrounding context. Again, this image just provides a visual of the northern elevation and the new entrance to the facility. There would be integral windows located within the phase that would serve a newly formed office and teaching space. The above slide indicates the extent of tree removal within the park. The park forms part of TPO 190. The survey has indicated that trees within the park vary in quality and condition. Trees highlighted in red, and also these blocks here represent trees to be removed and hedges to be removed. The purple dots represent trees that are in the park but would be relocated to the eastern boundary of the site. In total, the proposals would result in the loss of 36 trees, 5 hedgerows and 5 groups of trees. Some of the tree specimens lost as a result of the development would include elm, cherry, rowan and chestnut. Again, the arboricultural officer has undertaken a survey with the applicant, and the trees again have all been graded category B, moderate quality, to category U, very poor quality. There are a few category A trees within the site, but they would remain in situ. It's important to note that none of the category A trees, including those along the Museum Road frontage, which help to create the avenue effect there, would be affected by the proposals. This plan again just shows how tree planting would work with tree planting and tree retention, really. The majority of trees would be planted along the Cambridge Road frontage. You would have some trees enclosing the newly formed wildflower amphitheatre over here, and you would also have additional trees planted to the north there. The applicant has indicated that the replacement trees would be of a heavy standard, varying species selected for upright growth, including rowan trees, tulip tree, hornbeam, cherry specimens. The remainder of trees, as I said, would be replanted along the eastern frontage. That would be the trees relocated from this area here. The building is complemented by an extensive hard and soft landscaping scheme formed of 3 distinctive areas, including the urban plaza on Cambridge Road, the event space within the centre of the park, and then themed pocket parks here as well. 80% of the site would be soft landscaping compared to the remaining 20% that makes up the urban plaza and paths through the site. This space on Cambridge Road would enable all-round usability and would provide spaces for social interaction. To soften the urban edge of the development along the western boundary, again you've got new planting here, and this would help to form an urban orchard. Again, here's some visuals of how that would look in the context of the street scene. You've got a biodiverse green roof that would be planted with wildflower in between the PV panels. Rainwater swales here along Museum Road, again wildflower planting, and again some of these images on the right hand side just show the landscaped areas with the hard landscaping to the top there, the newly formed wildflower amphitheatre in here, and the Rotunda Memory Garden to the south that would replace the demolished Rotunda building. In terms of access, vehicular access to the underground car park would be facilitated through the existing Ravelin Park car park exit. The entrance would be widened to enable vehicles to enter the site safely. Furthermore, there would be an additional access proposed here along Museum Road. This access would be used strictly only for the servicing of the building, including chemical deliveries to the swimming pool, which would take place every 2 to 3 weeks. The university has also indicated that these would be completed at off-peak times to avoid disruption to the highways network. The proposed service access is considered to be acceptable. However, we have suggested a Section 278 agreement is conditioned as well. The proposal would result in the loss of 124 staff car parking spaces at the site. The proposed development would provide 72 car parking spaces for the users of the sports and leisure facility. In order to facilitate the displaced car parking spaces, the applicant has agreed to reinstate 45 car parking spaces at the Melbourne Place car park, which again would be secured by condition. And in regards to the remainder of these spaces, the university has indicated that they are in discussions with PCC regarding the provision of a park and ride scheme. And furthermore, the university again has indicated that in July 2018 their parking policy will be reviewed in order to limit the number of permits to staff and stricter selection criteria and increased costs. The site is considered to be highly accessible, located within 10-minute walk of Portsmouth and Southsea Harbour stations, as well as bus stops located on Cambridge Road, High Street, St George's Road and Museum Road. Just to conclude, the proposed development is considered to provide a high-quality sports and leisure facility for wider community use. Would result in the ecological enhancement of Ravelin Park, as well as improving the aesthetics of the park. Whilst improving, it would also improve public access and promote the highest levels of sustainability. A series of planning conditions has been suggested as part of the recommendation for conditional permission. in order to mitigate concerns relating to the redistribution of staff car parking, the loss of trees, as well as committing the applicant to sustainability targets and ecological enhancements. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Wilmore, you have 6 minutes.
Thank you, Chair, for the opportunity to speak this afternoon in support of the application for a new sports building and improvements to Ravelin Park. My name is Mark Harris from Barton Wilmore. We're the agents for the university in relation to this application. I'm also joined by Bernie Topham and Fiona Bell behind me from the university to answer any questions or queries later on. You'll be aware of the important role and contribution that the university makes to your city. The university's economic, social and cultural contributions range from being one of the largest employers to the value graduates add to the area and the spin-off benefits to the local economy from staff, students and visitors. The university has recently launched a new estate master plan which outlines proposals to regenerate its campus in the city centre, including an investment of over 400 million in new education facilities, public realm and wider infrastructure over the next 15 years. This planning application for a new sports building and improvements to the park represents the first project in that plan and a significant opportunity to deliver key benefits and objectives for the city. It's been formulated carefully by the university and a dedicated and experienced design and project team over the past 2 years, including important stakeholder and public engagement to culminate in the scheme before you this afternoon. The benefits include delivery of a modern, high-quality and sustainable development, including the first sports centre in the UK to achieve a BREEAM Outstanding rating, provision of attractive and modern sports floor space, together with ancillary teaching facilities to respond to the university's requirements to offer quality facilities for its students, as well as enhancing its attraction to prospective students. Provision of a high-quality sports facility for community use to further enhance the city's attraction and offer, the delivery of significant public realm improvements, including the creation of an arrival plaza to the park off Cambridge Road, and improvements within the park to enhance pedestrian accessibility and permeability, improvements to the setting of the surrounding area through high-quality design and public realm, introduction of high-quality soft landscaping in the park with the removal of trees in poor condition and the planting of new trees of different sizes and species throughout the park, enhancement of the park as well by providing spaces for passive and active recreation through new design features, which will enhance its role as part of the city's open space network, plus the establishment of a green biodiverse roof, including the introduction of beehives, which will promote the enhanced biodiversity and ecological value of the building and the park overall. The officer's report before you has provided a comprehensive assessment of the proposal and outlines the extent of policy compliance. Key conclusions I believe that are worth highlighting again this afternoon are the existing car park lies outside the open space designation which covers the park and it's allocated for university related uses under policy ST2. The development of the car park for university related use is therefore acceptable in principle. The new building does encroach on a small part of the park and designated open space due to its size and siting, but with the open space that's reintroduced to the park by the scheme, we calculate that only 935 square metres of open space is lost, which represents only 4% of the existing area. Now, whilst this is a net loss against policy PCS 13, the public benefits of the development, which I've already explained and have been presented to you, allow the scheme to entirely outweigh any perceived harm and achieve policy compliance. The scheme's level of sustainable performance is in excess of the policy PCS 15 BREEAM Excellent requirement, due to its outstanding rating, and based on its contribution overall to the plan's education, healthy city and community-based objectives, it's in compliance with policy PCS 14. In terms of the building and the landscape improvements, the scheme does represent high-quality design and an appropriate response to the natural and historic environment and setting of the site. The design quality and relationship of the scheme, together with the setting, has been the subject of careful assessment and extensive negotiations with your officers, both through pre-app and planning application, to deliver a scheme that we believe achieves strong compliance with your design and heritage policies of your plan, together with the MPPF. The provision of replacement trees and the trees that are retained complies fully with policy PCS 13 and goes beyond that, given that there will be a circa net increase of some 140 trees in the park and no Category A trees being lost. There will also be the net biodiversity benefits that I've explained. The scheme has been the subject of a comprehensive survey and transport assessment to assess the impact on the local highway network, both of the redistributed car parking spaces and the new scheme itself. And your officers have scrutinised and accepted the conclusions of that assessment, including the imposition of a condition on the provision of car parking spaces to serve university staff. Combined with the improvements to pedestrian accessibility and the encouragement of the use of non-car modes in the scheme, it is in clear compliance with policies PCS 17 and 23 of your plan. And importantly, as demonstrated in the officer's report and presentation, it is entirely compliant with your development plan policy and the MPPF. Subject to the outcome of this afternoon and the planning process, the university wishes to commence with the proposal at the earliest opportunity and open the building for the start of the 2020-2021 academic year. This will then realise both the considerable economic, social and environmental benefits of the scheme, both for the park, campus and the wider city. Thank you again for your time this afternoon, and I respectfully request you support the officer's positive recommendation.
Thank you very much. Members, many of us will have been at a presentation about this scheme, so are there any further questions which members wish to raise at this point? Councillor Stagg.
Thank you. I've got a few questions. One is, are the hedges being replaced anywhere? Because they're completely different habitat to trees. They sort of house insects, etc., and birds can nest in there, and that's something I'd like to see being encouraged within the urban area. That's the first question.
Andy?
Chair, Councillor, one of the discussions that we had with the landscape architects in view of the hedges is that some of them are incredibly poor quality, and the screening effect that they impose upon the inside of the park tends to preclude its use later in the day because people don't feel safe in there. So it was discussed that some of the hedges would be removed and not be replaced in order to open up visibility of some areas of the park and perhaps enhance physical security.
Any supplementary? Okay. Nobody else is indicating.
Why can't the rotunda be kept? I mean, you're keeping the footprint there. Why can't the actual building be kept? Because it's of historical value.
Okay, so yeah, further to obviously the members' briefing the other day, the applicant has come back with a response. The important thing to note with the rotunda is that it doesn't have any listed designation. It's not locally listed. It's not in any way protected by national designations. The university have indicated that they have struggled to find a use for the building. It's currently redundant and serves no great purpose within the park. The applicant has also worked very hard with officers to propose the Rotunda Memory Garden to at least make a connection back to the history of the site and obviously allow appropriate remembrance of that building.
Councillor Stagg.
Thank you. Did I hear right that the university was limiting the number of parking permits available? And if so, where do the cars of the people who don't get the permits go?
Okay, so the university have indicated that they would be making amendments to their parking permit provision. In terms of the displaced spaces, the applicant has suggested that Melbourne Place can be refurbished, which would provide 45 of those additional spaces. The rest of the additional spaces will come forward as part of the university's approach to managing sustainable travel options. They have indicated that those reviews are underway and that they will be promoting a park and ride service. However, it's not considered appropriate to limit this by plan and condition.
Any other questions, members? Comments? Councillor Elgin.
Thank you, Chair. As you stated, most of us asked our questions at the briefing. I think we are all appear to be content, so I'm going to move the officer's recommendation for permission. but I would also like to raise the point that I raised at the briefing, that I would like to see a contribution to upgrading the pedestrian crossing at the exit to Ravelin Park on Hampshire Terrace, because it is dangerous and it does cause traffic congestion.
Now, you're suggesting that you would like to investigate whether that could be imposed as a condition?
Obviously, no doubt there will be money coming to the City Council as a result of the development, so if possible, yes, I would like it to be.
Can we do a technical response to that? But also, I think we wanted to suggest an additional condition were members minded to approve this application. So, Stephen, if you want to do the technical response on that.
We have previously looked at this site for an upgrade. The surveys we carried out suggested that it would be justified to do. I personally don't feel that it makes a huge delay to traffic, but I can see the benefits as well. So there's no reason why we couldn't secure that by condition. The other part I wanted to put forward was regarding the service access through the Rotunda building. And that there be a condition to serve the facility via the main access rather than via the proposed, mainly due to the fact that there will be a significant amount of coach parking loss there, and we felt it would be more appropriate to investigate taking the access from the main vehicle access currently proposed.
Ms. Upton-Brown.
Just to be clear on the point of the deficiency that you've identified on that crossing, obviously as a planning committee, you can only require improvements that are a direct result of the development that you're considering, and you can't make up for an existing deficiency. So I think the question really for the committee is whether what you're asking is to make up for an existing deficiency, in which case you couldn't do that by way of a contribution through a Section 106 agreement, or if you think it is a deficiency that's a result of the development that you're considering this afternoon, then you would be able to think of collecting a contribution through way of a Section 106 agreement. I think sort of on a sort of second strand to that, if you are identifying a deficiency within the network that's impacting on the flow of traffic or the flow of pedestrians, and that you can't collect it through the planning application process, then obviously there is a SIL contribution and a neighbourhood spend, and you might want to bear that in mind if you can't solve that problem through the planning application, that you might then want to think how that money is used in the future to address an issue that you've identified.
Councillor Elcombe.
Yeah, I accept what's said. I think, despite what our highways engineer says, it is already a problem because you have a drip feed of pedestrians, which causes delays. The reason for my suggesting what I was suggesting is obviously this facility is going to be a lot busier and a lot more popular, certainly with people from the community using it, many of whom will hopefully walk from the areas to the east of the terraces, and therefore I thought a contribution would be justified, but if the advice is that it can't, I accept it.
I think our officers are considering the best way forward, because what you have identified is a deficiency which will be made worse by this planning application. And therefore it would be a proper thing which we could address. But the question is the best way to address it. Yeah. But you have Councillor Stubbs, then Councillor Stagg.
Well, firstly, I'd like to second the proposal that we grant planning consent. I think this is an excellent scheme, and I think it hasn't been brought up because I know it's not related to planning, but the fact that this will be open to the public is a very positive contribution and to the city and very welcome. The all the attempts at minimising the environmental impact are also very positive and very welcome. And you know, we need to get this. When we get a scheme like this, we need to make sure we're not putting unnecessary delays in the way we need to grant consent. So I'm happy to second it.
Councillor Stagg.
I agree with Councillor Stubbs that it's a really welcome addition to the city. I think it's a really, really good, the whole scheme. However, I do have concerns, and this is just an observation. It may not sound much, a loss of open space of only 0.09 hectares, but that's nearly the size of a football pitch by my reckoning. If my maths is right, 45 metres by 20, is that right? And I think an average football pitch is a hectare. So I think that's a sad loss to the city, especially such a congested city as this. I feel it's very, very sad that just because something which has got historical value hasn't got any kind of special listing, that something like the rotunda is lost. And I'm sure there are lots of things that it could be used for. I'm just very, very sad about it. I'm also sad that hedges are not going to be replaced. This is something that right across the country there's a loss of hedges. I know it affects rural areas more than anywhere else, but there's a loss of insects, pollinators, etc., birds and their nesting. So these are just observations. So I like the scheme itself. Or the other thing I don't like is I think it looks awful. Only because it's boxes. I mean, I appreciate that being a sports hall, you can't have windows, etc. But something to alleviate that big mass of white at the top would have been nice. I don't know what, but I'm not an architect. But I think coming up the road and seeing that, I find that not very nice. The actual content, the facility is brilliant. Thank you.
Would you care to make a comment on the issues which have been raised?
Okay. In terms of the issues, firstly, I just wanted to sort of confirm to the members that we are seeking delegated authority this afternoon to give authority to add and amend any conditions as necessary. And I would suggest to members of jury, as part of that delegation, that we actually just seek clarification between the applicant around that issue of the pedestrian movement and pedestrian crossing point. In terms of the materials, I think the materials are an integral part of the scheme, and that as officers we wouldn't be recommending to members that we sought to change, to go back to the applicants to seek to amend those conditions. Materials.
Are there any other comments before I move to the vote? In which case we have had it proposed and seconded that we approve this. Those in favour, please show. That is unanimous. We now come, if you read your agenda, to a particular thing which was said exclusion of press and public. I do not, at this point, intend to exclude the press and public. I do not. We have had a briefing, and so long as in the first part of this section, members will confine themselves to what is on the white papers, which they have, rather than to stray into matters which are commercially sensitive, I think we can continue this meeting in open session. At the end of this, before we come to taking a vote, I intend to seek your views on whether you wish to discuss the financial matters. If you do, we will then go into closed session and discuss the financial matters. This, I think, enables us to have maximum amount of transparency in examining this application, and so that is the way I intend to do it. If any member strays into commercially sensitive areas, I will stop them at that point. We can do that later should we wish. So, can I have Mr. Elliott, Mr. Tisdale and Mr. Stewart at the table, please? And can I ask the officer to introduce the material, strictly keeping to material which is on the white papers?
Thank you, Chairman. Good afternoon, members. Before I begin, can I just draw your attention to the supplementary matters sheet? This highlights that there will be a further obligation included within the associated Section 106 agreement linked to the travel plan provision. This requires contribution towards the set-up and establishment of a car club scheme within the Station Square area. So the proposal, you've all seen this for a briefing last week, but I will run through it, relates to a piece of land, the remaining piece of land on the former Zurich House office site, the application site sitting just in here, the Guildhall where we are at the moment, Portsmouth and Southsea Railway Station. This is just rotating the site around, showing the application boundary to the back edge of the pavement all the way around, including the lay-by in here, the boulevard into Victoria Park, the Grade 2-star listed War Memorial and the station at the bottom of the screen. So the proposal is for the construction of a 16-storey building comprising 147 dwellings, a 19-storey building comprising a hotel, offices and a sky bar, all connected at basement, ground and first floor level by a series of food and drink uses and the entrances to the uses above. The photographs just in front at the moment showing the application site. The edge of the adopted highway is actually the bollards you can just see on the commercial road frontage extending round into Stanhope Road. The view with the southern entrance into Victoria Park along the railway embankment, the view back past Catherine House towards Portsmouth and Southsea Railway Station and along the boulevard and the existing student halls of residence under construction. Just some more photographs of the site which I'm happy to go back to if you want me to later on. So the key considerations in this particular application is the principle of the development, including the introduction of further tall buildings to this part of the city centre, design, including its impact on neighbouring heritage assets, the highways implications, residential amenity and the provision of affordable housing. So just starting with the proposed uses, this is the southern tower, so ground floor commercial uses with the entrance to the residential units, 16 stories comprising 147 dwellings. The northern tower with access to a basement car park from Stanhope Road, the ancillary facilities for the hotel accommodation, the hotel rooms themselves, 3 stories of office B1A accommodation, approximately 2,320 square metres, a multifunctional space and then the sky bar at the top of the building. The site is situated within the Station Square locality of the city centre, which encourages town centre uses that would contribute to the vitality and viability of the city centre and the regeneration of the area. The site's also located within an area of opportunity for tall buildings, which are encouraged within this particular part of the city, and a small cluster of tall buildings is currently developing. The building's height and mix of uses would be entirely compatible with this area, and the incorporation of employment uses through the hotel, the offices and the food and drink offer at ground floor would be extremely positive, particularly where the Western M27 area has seen a 50% reduction in office floor space since 2011. So in terms of design and layout, the building has a more set back frontage onto Commercial Road to maintain that sense of openness with Commercial Road and the Station Plaza. There are changes proposed to the southern entrance into Victoria Park, maintaining a single entrance gate with a new area of landscaping. It would complete the boulevard effect with Catherine House, small area of raised terracing with steps down onto the boulevard itself, entrance to the underground car park from Stanhope Road. So just starting at the bottom of the building, there would be a basement car park across the entire site, comprising 41 car parking spaces for hotel guests only. There would be an access directly to the hotel with ancillary storage and plant areas. At ground floor, the commercial uses, a mix of food and drink uses. The exact layout of these are yet to be determined, whether that's a single unit or 3 separate units. That will come in more detail later. Onto the boulevard, a 2-storey drinking establishment bar. You have the entrance on the corner of Stanhope Road and Commercial Road to the hotel itself, the entrance to the offices and the Sky Bar, and the entrance into the residential area with associated bin and bicycle storage facilities. First floor level, the residential uses start within the southern tower, and then at first floor level you have the ancillary hotel uses, so the kitchen areas and the restaurant and dining areas, and the upper floor of the bar. At second floor is where the 2 buildings split. This is a typical layout of the residential building and typical layout of the hotel accommodation. Between floor 3 and 12, it will be a very similar layout, identical on both of the units. This is the typical layout for the hotel and the typical layout for the residential units, which would comprise 89 one-bedroom dwellings, 58 two-bedroom dwellings. Generally, all of the units would have a good degree of natural light and outlook, either to the east, the west and the south. It is accepted that 2 of the dwellings on each of the floor would have limited outlook onto this central area and onto the external elevation of the hotel. However, this is not considered to be an unacceptable relationship, and future residents would be fully aware of this situation when moving into the building. Again, just flicking through the other floors of the building up onto the 13th floor, and it's probably worth mentioning at this point that the City Council's Environmental Health team have confirmed that the dwellings can be adequately protected against the adjoining commercial uses, which would include the railway line that runs along the southern boundary of the site, the bars and food and drink uses contained within the buildings themselves, and the large nightclub which is located in the drill hall just to the north on Stanhope Road. It's not considered that the height or bulk of the buildings would have any significant impact on the neighbouring occupiers, and there are a series of conditions included within the delegated report to maintain the residential amenity of existing occupiers within the surrounding area and those that would be residing within the building itself. Just moving up to the 14th and 15th floor is where the office accommodation begins. There's a small external terrace area associated with the use of the offices. Moving up onto the 16th floor is the termination of the residential building with a green roof, further office accommodation, multifunctional event space on the 17th floor, and the Sky Bar on the top floor, which would have separate accesses from the hotel and directly from the entrance down at the back of the building. Then the building would be topped off with a open plant level. The building has been designed with a full exterior sort of extended parapet to hide all of that from public view. In terms of appearance, the applicant has worked closely with the local planning authority over the last 24 months, which has resulted in 2 relatively elegant buildings, certainly to these elevations fronting onto the station, which would be completed in a simple palette of high quality materials. You have a dark grey black brick to the hotel building, a light grey to the residential building, with large areas of glazing and Portland stone onto this particular facade. The staggered effect and the full height glazing would provide vertical emphasis and add interest and help divide the larger facades onto the north and the south. and the residential building would incorporate a series of protecting window surrounds and a series of horizontal breaks to give the building a little bit more articulation. The residential building is also chamfered on the south-western corner, and both would include extending hoods around the eastern elevation to provide more depth. This is the elevation onto the boulevard. Again, large expanses of glazing and glazing effect panels into the boulevard area. This is the view internally, so this is the internal space between the two buildings looking north, and the internal space looking south. And this is the contextual street scene onto Stanhope Road, so the former Zurich building, the extension now forming Catherine House in its totality, and the boulevard that would run between the two buildings. This is context onto Commercial Road, so looking from the station effectively. The two taller elements of the building, this is just showing the development that is currently under construction on the former Co-op Bank site. Now, whilst resulting in two very large buildings, it's considered that the scheme has been well conceived and would meet the requirements for high quality architecture within the city, creating a striking landmark development at a key city centre site, which would contribute to the city's skyline. Just one final elevation. This is the south elevation onto the railway embankments in Victoria Park. Now, members, in addition to the design, you must consider the impact on heritage assets. This particular slide is just showing the extent of those. So we have the Victoria Park Conservation Area, Guildhall and Victoria Park Conservation Area with the cream colour in the background. You have Victoria Park itself, which is included on the Register of Historic Parks and Gardens. You have the Grade 2 star listed War Memorial, sited directly opposite the railway embankments. Then you have the Guildhall, Portsmouth and Southsea Railway Station, and the Drill Hall, which are those that are considered to be most affected by the development, all of which are Grade 2 listed. Now, to help understand the impact of design and the size of the buildings on these heritage assets, the applicant has provided a number of accurate visual representations from a series of locations that we have agreed with them. So just working clockwise around, this is the view of the new boulevard back into the park, which will eventually form the new main entrance from Commercial Road into Victoria Park itself. We have the elevations as you would see it from the corner of Commercial Road and Station Road, so effectively where the large digital display screen is at the moment. The view a little bit further along between the former post office and the Matalan entrance. This is the view from the station, a little bit further afield on Greetham Street, and this is the view from outside the Premier Inn just across the road. This gives more detail on the projecting window surrounds and also the hood features, the Portland stone onto the station, that welcoming feature. The view from the centre of Guildhall Square, you can just see the residential buildings sticking out on the side there. Its context with Catherine House, the former Zurich building. And just moving further around, I think this is a good point to identify the particular choice of materials and the colour choices. So you have the strong dark blacks of Zurich House and the civic offices, and then the very white colours associated with the Portland stone of the Guildhall, the War Memorial, which sits just in here, and the other Portland stone facades on buildings within Edinburgh Road. Sorry, just moving back. So whilst I think buildings of this size will ultimately have an impact on the setting of these heritage assets, it's not considered that the harm would result in a substantial impact, and it's considered that this would be outweighed by the public benefits of the proposal. As such, this is recommended both in design and heritage terms. And the final view just from the north and from across Victoria Park. And just some context just to show that the existing tall buildings that are either planned or under construction at the moment. You have the Travel Lodge building in here and the former co-op site under construction, both in these ones, and the views across Victoria Park. Now, moving on to the highways impacts, the basement car park would provide 42 spaces for hotel guests only. The residential scheme would operate on a car-free basis. The local highways authority, we have representations here if you have any questions, raised no objections to the proposal, citing the highly sustainable location where car-free living is achievable and should be encouraged. It's highlighted that even if residents choose to own vehicles within this particular development, there is no unrestricted parking within close proximity of the application site, and residents would not have access to residential parking schemes that operate within the surrounding areas. Now, on the basis that significant levels of residential development is likely within the city centre within the coming years, and to avoid street scenes that are dominated by car parks or on-street parking, it's suggested that this development is treated as a trial with close monitoring through the travel plan, which would include the contribution towards the car share scheme. This would provide the City Council with a robust evidence base to base their decisions on for similar applications within the city centre. It wouldn't change the outcome of this application, but it would give us the evidence going forward. So given the highly sustainable location of the site, this is considered to be the most appropriate route forward, and the added benefit of a car-free scheme is the reduced impact that the development would have on air quality within the surrounding area and trip generation on the surrounding highway network. I will just run on to and touch on the viability of the scheme, but given the costs associated with this ambitious project, the application is supported by a viability approval indicating that the development would not be viable with a policy-compliant 30% affordable housing contribution. The appraisal has been independently tested through CBRE, who have highlighted that the applicant's figures are reasonable, although the associated build costs appear to be low and the gross development value is at the upper end of a reasonable range. They conclude that even the best case scenarios suggest that a profit of around 15%, which is generally regarded as a level where development would be attractive to developers and investors.
I don't think you should go beyond that. We will come back to that should we require. This is not on the white papers.
That's fine. There's no figures on there that have no problem. So, okay, well, the assessment has concluded that the applicant's assessment is reasonable, and whilst there is no affordable housing, which is disappointing, I think you have to look at the public benefits of the proposal, including the provision of 147 dwellings towards the city's housing need, the employment opportunities associated with all of the commercial uses on the site, the redevelopment of a prominent city centre location, the provision of office accommodation in an area where developers have generally resisted such floor space, and the wider contribution towards the regeneration of our city centre. Therefore, for the detailed reasons set out within your papers, this application comes with a recommendation of conditional permission with delegated authority to the Assistant Director of Regeneration to grant conditional permission subject to the completion of a 106 agreement. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Deputies, you have 12 minutes between you. Should you require it, use it as you wish.
Thank you very much, Chair. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Peter Tisdale, Chief Executive of that group, the applicant in this case. Andrew Elliott on my right is our planning consultant from Terence O'Rourke, and Adrian is our Chief Architect from Urban Innovations. So there will be a chance to ask us any questions that you might have. I'll keep it fairly brief. We purchased this site a couple of years ago from Knightsbridge Student Housing, the guys that developed the Catherine House student development specifically for a hotel, and that was always the intention. It's a very good hotel location, being directly opposite the station and so central. However, as the design progressed through the stages, it became apparent we felt there was the opportunity for more than just a hotel. So we have designed in, as the planning officer has explained, extensive ground floor provision to give a vibrant street scene with cafes and restaurants, and the residential. As Gary says, it's disappointing that the scheme isn't able to actually afford affordable housing, but we think 147 units in this location will be a very good addition to the city, and it will be very much designed towards a PRS investment, a private rented sector residential development which will be held for years to come and rented to young professionals, young people, for long-term investment, and it will be rented on 6, 12, 18-month tenancies, and we think it will provide a high-quality, affordable, not in a technical sense, but in terms of a market sense, good value living accommodation in a very central location, which we think will be something that will become more normal in Portsmouth as the years progress. So the addition of the residential has actually caused some challenges. We think overall, as it knits together, we think the offer of the development is very attractive. And we think that the development will create a very vibrant destination for living, working, eating, staying in an area that's already surrounded by additional developments. We think this, in amongst all the student housing and all the other stuff that's going on, will really cement this location as a first-class place to be. A little bit about us. We are long-term investors. We are fortunate to have funds to invest, and we develop our own buildings. We don't buy finished product by somebody else. We do everything from scratch. We only work on high-quality schemes. We like to develop schemes which are the best in any city that we're in, or up there with the best. It's very much the intention of what we try to do. In this case, the hotel will be a Hilton hotel, which we own others in other cities. So everything for us is very much about the long term. We will own the hotel in the long term, so we are completely committed to the long-term enhancement of not just the building, but the whole area. You could say we have a very vested interest in the long-term benefit and enhancement of the area, because we will own the hotel which sits there. And those aren't just words, it's what we do, and I think our investment into the ice rink in Guildhall Square last winter and again this winter proves that we're here for the longer term. This type of development we've done before. We've done the scale and the size. It's not a small undertaking, and the mixture of uses, which provides for many challenges. You mix 3 or 4 different uses all together in one set of buildings. So we've done that before, so we're experienced. We have the expertise and the capability to do it, and we have, equally as importantly, the funds available to bring this forward alongside institutional funding that we'll bring in alongside our own money. So we are well placed to bring this forward, and we sincerely hope you're able to consent the application, and if you do, I think we'll do a very good job at bringing it forward. As I say, Adrian and Andrew and myself, if there are any questions, then fire away. Thank you very much.
It is not normal to ask questions of the deputies, but if Mr. Elliott or Mr. Stewart have anything that they wish to add and bring to the attention of the committee, please do so. If we have any specific questions, they will be referred back to you via the chair. Members, any questions? Councillor Stack.
Be the one who's always asking questions. I don't know that I've read it anywhere, but bearing in mind the report we had from the fire authority about building standards, etc., are sprinklers going to be included in the buildings?
Well, that's a question which you can answer.
Yes, they are. Both buildings are sprinkled.
Thank you. Other questions, members? You had a fairly good briefing the other day. If there are comments, but not a proposal at this stage, if there are comments, can we have the comments now? Anybody wish to comment on it? Councillor Smythe.
This is my first planning committee, and I'm particularly disappointed, of course, that the 147 dwellings which may gain permission today, with none of them being affordable housing. I'm particularly passionate about affordable housing because I was used to be the development officer for two registered social landlords, and I do hope that this doesn't become a precedent. However, I do think this is an exceptional building, and we're assured with support, will support the local economy by virtue of high-end hotels, sky bar, offices, and a rather new sort of housing, which is essentially you described as short-term private rented sector for example, people coming to work short-term at the university or people coming, transitioning into Portsmouth. So in that sense, I feel that it will be a welcome investment in the city centre and in the provision of facilities we don't have. I really wanted to take the opportunity to hope that officers will work very hard to work with developers on future developments of this size. I know you already do, but I just wanted to make the point particularly as it was my first meeting, to ensure that we do have affordable housing in the appropriate ratios on less exceptional, less possibly economically optimistic schemes as this one, and designed properly into future schemes. This scheme isn't a good design in which to integrate affordable housing. I can see that too. So I also think that probably given the independent report we've had, which I'm not going to mention at all any further, we'd be unlikely to win an appeal on this. So it's with a somewhat heavy heart that I will be supporting this.
Councillor Stubbs.
When I was thinking to myself just when we were going through the deputations and so forth about how much money has been invested in the area around Station Square, and I make it about in excess of £200 million if this scheme is included, which is really a remarkable amount. I mean, you can sit there and marvel about that. It is an absolutely huge amount of money, and it's not cost local taxpayers a penny, which is just as well, because there's no way we could come up with sums on that scale. You know, this and other schemes are about transforming the city centre. That the city centre really needs to be a place where large numbers of people live. It needs to be a place with an improved retail offer. It needs to be a place for employment and a place for a night out. And getting to that, of course, is very difficult. We're obviously all very aware of the problems that there are in the retail sector, but schemes like this are part of bringing about that transformation. And it's got to be very welcome. You've got office space, you've got hotel space, you know, and you've also got residential. And I know a lot of people will say, well, they don't want residential, and I think that they're wrong. This is about, it's bringing life into the city centre, and it's also recognising, by the way, that housing targets are a real thing. And if the housing target's not met here, it won't go away. It'll have to be met somewhere else. And if the council tried just to pretend, stick its head in the sand and ignore that, all that would happen is you end up in a situation where the government basically sets your local plan aside and you can have housing built on industrial estates. That is the fallback. That is the penalty for not ensuring enough development takes place. But this is definitely not a development I would want to stop. I think it's a really excellent one. And you know, one other aspect of this, which reminds me back to the budget meeting we had on the council earlier in the year, and in fact I think one similar thing came up last year, whereby it was questioned when we were talking about the capital budget about the money put aside for city centre improvements. I know it was, you know, 1 year. Jerry Van Jackson even put down an amendment to take that out, but I really don't think that should happen. I mean, we've got the buildings here, but the public realm still needs work on it. I mean, I would like to actually see more money put towards that, but I certainly wouldn't want to lose what we've got.
Any other comments? No? Members, do you wish to go into closed session to discuss any of the financial matters? If anybody does, will they please indicate? No, thank you. In which case, can I have a proposal? Councillor Stubbs, your proposal.
Approval in line with the report.
Is there a seconder for that? Right, Councillor Elcombe had his hand up first. We all know, Councillor Welcome, you're a gentleman of the old school, but I did say you first. All in favour, please show. That is unanimous. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, members. Thank you very much for the deputation. Before you go, this is Ruth O'Meller's last meeting. She is leaving us to go to somewhere else. Whilst I cannot approve of her going to somewhere else, I think we would all wish her well. She has worked very hard for us and has been one of the few officers who we can always guarantee will smile at the end of a meeting. So thank you very much for your efforts, and we wish you well in your future. Councillor Welcome.
Yeah, I'd like to second that. I think she's done an outstanding job. And the other thing I'd like to do, I'd like to ask our Assistant Director to pass on certainly my congratulations to Niall McAteer, who's a relatively inexperienced officer, and I thought he did an outstanding job in presenting the Ravelin Park procedure proposal today and the stuff he's done on that.
Okay. But anyway, members, thank you very much for the courtesy which you have shown to the chair throughout the meeting. That concludes the meeting. Thank you very much.